In its final laps, the 2001 Daytona 500 is already an instant classic. It has not only lived up to unprecedented hype, but in many ways exceeded it. Never before, and perhaps never since, has the event been so competitive or volatile. It's seen both the cleanest racing, 173 laps of low attrition and high intensity, then suddenly, one of Daytona's most awful multi-car accidents. Finally, an all-out sprint for stock car racing's biggest prize. All of this is being witnessed by a massive audience. New broadcast partner Fox Sports will pull the highest TV rating of any 500 since 1986, and an 11% improvement over CBS's last in 2000. As the white flag flies, Fox is set to outdo CBS in another way. In 1993, Dale Jarrett scored his first of 3 Daytona 500 victories, with his father Ned calling him home from the broadcast booth, a race that had eluded Ned in his own racing career. Now it is Darrell Waltrip, fresh off retirement, who can no longer contain his excitement. Up front rides baby brother Michael Waltrip, who in the final moments of his 463rd start can begin to see his first checkered flag through the glare of the late afternoon sun, then his dirty windshield, then the tears. Waltrip's opportunity, the cars he and teammate Dale Jr. drive, and the lead both now enjoy are all thanks to one man, the man who happens to be running behind them in third. In a matter befitting his nickname as the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt leads this 500 just 4 times for 17 laps, but has been a threat the entire day. As expected of Daytona's winningest driver, this week has seen him nearly pick up his 35th win at this track all 4 times he's taken the green flag. And consistent with his aggressive driving style, his iconic number 3 is now battered and bruised, but unbroken. In any other year, this final sprint would see Earnhardt signal someone to draft him, Sterling Marlin, Ken Schrader, Rusty Wallace, and the two would fly past the other drivers into the lead. But not this time. This time he blocks Marlin, blocks Schrader, blocks Rusty. As he does, the traffic behind him builds. Waltrip and Jr. continue to pull away. Then, just 10 seconds from the finish line, at the very instant it becomes clear the leaders can't be caught, Earnhardt loses control, collides with Schrader, and slams the turn 4 wall nearly head-on. Both cars slide out of view as Darrell Waltrip signals the end of his brother's 16-year winless streak. On the cool-down lap, as safety crews swarm around the accident scene, Richard Childress can't get Dale Earnhardt to answer his radio. Childress switches channels and tells his other driver, Mike Skinner, to take another lap and see what's happening. Skinner stops on the apron of turn 4, where thoughts of his strong run ruined by a part failure are pushed aside by what he sees. The report he radios back is grim. From the moment Schrader unhooks Earnhardt's window net to his arrival at Halifax Hospital, there are no signs of life. At 5:16 p.m. local time, 36 minutes after impact, nothing more can be done. For nearly 2 hours, the news is kept quiet, but not the sight of a Ford van pulling up to the emergency room entrance, the words mortuary transport clearly visible on its dark red paint. By the time Mike Helton's voice echoes through the silent media center, the van has delivered Earnhardt's body to the medical examiner's office. The perfect race has become the perfect tragedy.
But after the accident in turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
During which time we continued CPR. There was a full trauma team there to meet him, a trauma neurosurgeon, Dr. Bill Kuhn, trauma surgeon, Dr. Demiuga. There were several emergency room doctors there as well. We all did everything we could for him. And additionally, there was an anesthesiologist who helped us maintain the airway. But he had what I feel were life-ending type injuries at the time of impact, and really nothing could be done for him.
It's really kind of hard to say. I mean, I was fortunate enough to watch Dale get in his first car way back when we were racing at Concord, and his daddy was still helping Dale. And a competitor, I don't think I know of anybody I've ever been around that epitomizes the word. The man was relentless as far as his competition was concerned. we had a lot of good times together. We raced together on those dirt tracks at home. We used to go to his place and ride in the back of his boat, go tubing together. We'd done some hunting together, but through all our relationship and friendship, he always was a competitor.
Dale Earnhardt is, it's hard to say was, but was one of my best friends for many, many years. You know, it's ironic that people talk about Dale Earnhardt and how selfish he was on the racetrack, how much he cared about himself on the racetrack because he was a winner and he wanted to win when he buckled that helmet on. But those of us who knew him knew that he was really a very, very unselfish individual off the racetrack. And the irony is that today, for the first time that I can remember, and I've known this man a long, long time, you saw him be very, very unselfish in those final few laps. He had a car that could have made a move, in my opinion, following this sport for 20 years. He could have pulled up in front of Sterling Marlin, maybe Kenny Schrader, probably drafted by and won his second Daytona 500. But what he did in those final laps was what a father would do for a son. Ironically, that was his son right in front of him, Dale Earnhardt Jr., or what a brother would do for a brother. And Michael Waltrip was like the little brother that he didn't have. And he stayed there and ran 185 mile per hour screen as a pick, and he kept Sterling Marlin back there and Kenny Schrader and those guys who didn't get a chance to get up there and fight for the win, so that his two people in front of him, his son and one of his best friends, Michael Waltrip, who he had given a chance, did have a chance. And so it was very, very unselfish of Dale Earnhardt. And it's a move that many of us who've known him for years would understand. But it's very difficult now to understand because he's gone.
To lose, you know, our most prolific race car driver of NASCAR, it's certainly difficult for all of us to comprehend and fathom at this point in time. But it was a vicious crash, and certainly, you know, a difficult one for everyone. Right here, you see how the impact is so hard, so vicious. 109 miles an hour. He had no time to react at all. Had no time to react whatsoever. It was difficult to watch. Difficult to watch.
Whatever stock car racing is, Dale Earnhardt was. He was the child in the back of a pickup truck at the Charlotte Motor Speedway with his dad, watching those cars in the 600 and dreaming someday of being in Winston Cup racing. He was the teenager whose equipment was a T-shirt and a crash helmet, bumming rides, building cars, trying to prove that he could handle those short tracks in the Carolinas just as well as his father, Ralph Earnhardt, did, who was a national champion. He was the guy that came along in 1979 and became Rookie of the Year in Winston Cup racing, and 1 year later was the Winston Cup national champion. And through it all, he seemed quiet. He became the intimidator, one who didn't have much to say, but who did it with his deeds on the racetrack. His wife, Teresa, changed a lot of that. He became much easier with the media. Until 1994, on this very track, just a few hundred feet from where he died today, his best friend in this world, Neil Bonnet, lost his life in a very similar type of crash. It seemed as if he went into a dark period for a bit. And then he's come out of it. 1997, nearly won the 500. It was right there. And then was upside down in the backstretch, refused to go to the medical center, got back in and drove the car around and finished the race. And then 1 year later, we saw him in Victory Lane. 20 years of effort in winning the race that meant the most to him, and there he was, up on top of the world. He told me in Victory Lane that day, yes, yes, 20 years. Can you believe it? Now we come to this point in his career. Going down the backstretch in the final lap, out in front, Michael Waltrip in one of his cars. His son is running in second place, and two of his colleagues, two of his racing pals, are right in there beside him going for a photo finish for third spot. There's Ken Schrader from Missouri on the outside. There's Sterling Marlin from Tennessee on the inside. And as they went into that turn and he saw what was coming about, I would consider that Dale Earnhardt died happy.
The irony of this, Mike Joy, is just that. Gave a chance to Michael Waltrip, who hadn't won in 462 races. His son finishing second, both cars owned by Dale Earnhardt, and competing to the very, very end.
Earnhardt had won this race. He knew the great joy of winning the 500. And Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip, and I, calling those final laps, somehow knew that he would protect the lead of Waltrip and his son, let them fight it out among themselves, and may the best man win. And that's what he was doing when he and Sterling Marlin touched and Earnhardt went caroming off to the wall. It is such irony that the man who celebrates as the Daytona 500 champion can't have his car owner and benefactor share in that celebration.
I spoke with Dale Earnhardt this week. He said that after the neck surgery a couple of years ago, seeking that 8th Winston Cup title was very important to him, and he felt like he could drive for another 10 years or so. Unfortunately, that dream has been cut short. Dale Earnhardt, who would have turned 50 years old in April, has died on the final lap in the 43rd running of the Daytona 500.
We'll have more on the tragic death of Dale Earnhardt when this special edition of NASCAR Victory Lane continues after the break.
Time doesn't slow down or stop. It stalls. For the rest of that night, and for much of the following week, the same news, the same sudden stop, the same years, 1951 to 2001, play on a never-ending loop. The soundtrack varies from Guns N' Roses' Knockin' on Heaven's Door to Rachel Portman's theme from the film Cider House Rules. No one could imagine it, but everyone knew the day would come that Dale Earnhardt retired from racing. Sometime in the indeterminate future, he'd be watching from pit road as his 3 teams at DEI competed for wins and championships. Then, much later, decades later, he'd pass away, quietly, privately, and surrounded by his family. No one dreamed that it would end this way, to lose him so suddenly, so tragically, so publicly. Not in the future, but now. Here, on the final lap of the Daytona 500, with his newest hire, Michael Waltrip, left waiting for him in Victory Lane. It was all so wrong, and in the cruelest of ways. It simply didn't seem possible, and yet there it was, over and over, as real could be.
It was just a shock. I was sitting on the 4th turn where it happened at, and I guess I'll never come back to Daytona again.
As night falls, Daytona's flags are at half-mast. The last few fans pass the sign outside the track, which now reads, Dale, with us always. Among these fans are brothers William and John Pritchett of Windsor, North Carolina, who traveled to Daytona by private plane with friends Ray and Ken Chapman. William is flying the group home when at 8:17 p.m., their Beech 36 aircraft loses contact with air traffic control. The next afternoon, debris is found floating in the Atlantic near Tybee Island. There are no survivors.
We close today's broadcast from Phoenix. We have just learned the tragic news involving the death of Dale Earnhardt during today's running of the Daytona 500. Now, RPM tonight is coming up next. The staff in Daytona will have complete details. From all of us here in Phoenix, our deepest sympathies to the Earnhardt family. Good night, everyone.
Mike Massaro is covering Speed Weeks for us, and again, what should have been a joyous day for Michael Waltrip has turned tragic. Not only did Waltrip drive for Dale Earnhardt, the two were very close friends. Mike, a very difficult time right now for NASCAR.
And I think that may be actually an understatement. The mood is extremely somber here in Daytona, and it was a wild mood swing in Victory Lane. It went from total elation to total devastation. Right now at Daytona, if you look behind me at International Speedway Boulevard, now normally after the Daytona 500, horns are blowing, people are yelling, people are partying, people are having a very good time. Right now, you could practically hear a pin drop. It's that quiet.
The impact of the loss, perhaps it's too early to really state what it means to not have Dale Earnhardt as part of the Winston Cup Series. But if you could, speak to the impact and also the irony involved here.
Well, Whit, it's such a dramatic impact. Dale Earnhardt, if you will, and I don't think I'm overstating this at all, is NASCAR's equivalent to, say, Michael Jordan or, say, Mark McGwire in baseball. He had that much effect on this sport. He had 7 championships. He was 6th on the all-time win list with 76 victories. People simply came to the racetrack to either root for him or root against him. But no matter what you say about Dale Earnhardt, he was all about winning. He was an ambassador for this sport, and people really enjoyed having him around. There's no doubt that NASCAR can go on without him. They've lost champions in the past. Alan Kulwicki, Davey Allison both lost their lives after winning Winston Cup Series championships, but this sport will certainly be different next week at Rockingham.
At this point, we don't know the full extent of the injuries that caused the death of Dale Earnhardt, but surely it is not too early to start asking questions about safety issues in stock car racing. This has come up before, some of the deaths of drivers in years past that you touched on. Was there any mention made of, for example, the Hans device or any of the other safety precautions that perhaps could be taken in stock car racing?
Well, Whit, this was the 4th death on a racetrack in NASCAR in the last 12 months. Safety on the top of everybody's mind. The Hans device did come up in questioning of Dr. Steve Bohannon. He speculated, however, that it may not have made a difference. However, it just seems ironic. I had the chance to speak with Dale Earnhardt only 3 weeks ago in Las Vegas during a test about the Hans device, because so many drivers are experimenting with it these days. And Dale Earnhardt's response was, he's not going to use it. He doesn't like it. He's uncomfortable with it. And that's pretty much the stance of most of the veterans here in NASCAR. The Hans device has, I believe, become mandatory in Formula One and in the kart series, and right now is only beginning to catch on in popularity.
Mike Massaro in Daytona, a very tough day for everybody. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Whit.
And there were some very anxious hours here in Daytona Beach this evening, as news of Dale Earnhardt's condition was only rumored for several hours. Then, of course, the terrible confirmation by NASCAR President Mike Helton came in the infield at 7:30. Many NASCAR fans gathered here at Halifax Medical Center in order to pay their respects. And although it is the furthest thing from anybody's mind right now, the question is, how quickly do they go back to racing? And we asked veteran race analyst Ned Jarrett, should the circuit be continued next week at Rockingham?
Yes, I think they should. And Dale Earnhardt would want them to go back to Rockingham next week because, you know, this is the business and the form of life that they chose. And the world doesn't stop when we lose somebody, even as great as Dale Earnhardt was. The world doesn't stop, and he wouldn't want it to stop. He would want the sport to go on. He would want his son to be there next week racing. Now, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but I'll guarantee you that that's what he would have wanted.
We appreciate everybody's support, and it's a tough time.
It just left a feeling of, a sense of, indeed, that this man is truly a legend, and he's my hero. And I will mourn for him, and I know that there are millions that will mourn for him. He brought me into stock car racing, and I know that he's brought millions in. I don't know, there's just something special about Dale.
They come from every corner of the country, dressed in black, silver, and white. They hold candlelight vigils outside Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, leaving flowers and souvenirs in a makeshift memorial.
With each person coming by to pay their respects, the memorial in front of Earnhardt's headquarters grows. His crew has been coming and going all day, trying to support one another.
They'll get through this, and there's a lot of people praying for them, and that's what they need right now. They need prayers and support.
They walk in a daze around the empty Darlington Raceway, which has opened its doors for grieving fans.
Definitely a track too tough to tame for him. You know, I think he done a lot of aggressive racing here, just like every other track.
Drove like an old dirt track driver. He didn't care.
Flowers, cards, and balloons are all they can do to pay their respects to their hero. They say no one will be able to fill Earnhardt's shoes.
You liked him or you didn't like him, but you still had to respect him if you didn't like him. That's the type of guy he was.
Now, people we spoke with today who were at Daytona say they will never go back. The memories are just too much to relive again.
Some demand that Earnhardt be immediately enshrined in the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, but the voting panel decides not to stray from their mandate of waiting 5 years before a candidate is considered. There are also demands to retire the number 3, something unprecedented in NASCAR, but then comes the reminder that Dale Earnhardt didn't drive for his own team. It is Richard Childress's number, and Childress will ultimately decide what will happen with it.
In your mind, can Dale Earnhardt ever be replaced on the racetrack?
No, but I'd like to see him retire the number. I think that Childress should, and I think that I'm looking forward to seeing this boy grow up and just doing what his daddy did.
For some fans, grief turns to anger, and the search for a scapegoat begins. Sterling Marlin is the first. The contact between Marlin's car and Earnhardt's is blamed for causing the accident. He receives death threats, so many, in fact, that the Ganassi team puts a patrolman on duty outside the shop and instructs their crew not to wear their uniforms in public.
I want to ask that everyone keep Sterling Marlin in your prayers. Sterling didn't do anything wrong. You know, if they did, when they rubbed, I'm sure Sterling didn't think Dale would wreck or he would have not rubbed him. But there was just a little bit of contact, and maybe it would have just shot Dale up the hill a little bit, Sterling probably thought.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Michael Waltrip come out in Marlin's defense, and both NASCAR officials and members of the Richard Childress Racing crew assure the driver that he did nothing wrong. They're not the only ones. One fan mails Marlin a Medal of Strength, which reads, "An angel to bring you strength to meet any challenge." In the shop, Marlin puts the medal on the dashboard of his Dodge that he'll race in Rockingham.
The void that is opened is deep. We hope in the next hour that our remembrances of Dale will bring some comfort to the millions of fans that are hurting along with us. The time to address the hows and whys of the accident will come, but not for now. We need to share in a celebration of the life of this American icon.
3 months after signing off from a Winston Cup race for the final time, Bob Jenkins reunites with his ESPN crew for a special tribute show.
Last year at Atlanta, when ESPN closed our 20-year ride with NASCAR, I thought I had done my final Winston Cup-related broadcast with Benny Parsons. Now with this most tragic of occurrences, it's a time for families to come back together. Joining us now from Daytona Beach is our friend and colleague who spent many a Sunday afternoon racing with and marveling at Dale Earnhardt.
Bob, in the mid-'80s, I was so envious of Dale Earnhardt. He had it all, winning races, winning championships, and the fans he had hordes and hordes of fans. When he was introduced at the racetrack, it seemed like everybody in the grandstands stood up and cheered. Meanwhile, when I was introduced, just a smattering of applause from the grandstands. But Earnhardt winning those championships, winning races, and they were on top of the world. He could do no wrong. And I think all race car drivers have to be a little bit envious of that, because that's what we're all trying to do, is go out there and do exactly what he was doing.
Back in Florida, the induction of Michael Waltrip's car into Daytona, USA is postponed, along with the rest of the traditional celebrations. In its place, Waltrip participates in an afternoon press conference with Bill France Jr., Mike Helton, and Dr. Steve Bohannon.
Couldn't wait. I won the race, and I was telling everybody about it, and I just couldn't wait till I got that big grab on the neck and a big hug. I just knew any minute Dale was going to run in victory lane and say, "That's what I'm talking about right there." But that wasn't to be.
It's going to take time, if we ever feel it. I'm sure we will. The life has to go on. And I touched on my remarks earlier that when Dale and Jeff Bodine came down, they had a good appreciation for the sport and where it was going to be going down the road.
Will the racing go on this weekend, or will this race be moved? Do we know yet?
No, it'll go on in Rockingham this weekend, yes.
Beyond the human toll comes a financial one. That same day, ISC's stock falls 7.2%, while SMI's drops 10%. Both recover only some of their value by the closing bell. Dale Earnhardt's entire career coincided with NASCAR's explosive growth. But while the sport was the biggest it had ever been, outside of the Southeast, the news handled racing very much as a niche interest, only to be mentioned briefly at the end of the sports segment, if ever at all. But Earnhardt's death, and the tragic circumstances surrounding it, immediately make headlines.
It was the racing equivalent of losing Michael Jordan or Joe Montana, except Earnhardt dominated his sport much longer than either of those men.
And when national networks learn of the Hans device and NASCAR's decision not to mandate it, the tragedies of the 2000 season come back to haunt the sanctioning body.
He isn't the first NASCAR driver to die this way. He's the fourth in the past 9 months.
With the right equipment, some believe he might have survived.
A violent thrusting of the head, causing a phenomenon called basal skull fracture.
At a small factory in Atlanta, former driver Jim Downing now makes what's known in the racing world as Hans, or head and neck supports. On the market for years, NASCAR has only recently promoted their use to its drivers, including Dale Earnhardt, a throwback to racing's grittier days.
He's seen the videos, seen the device. He knows it exists. Just wasn't interested.
It's pretty clear that it certainly would have helped him a lot and probably would have helped him stay alive.
Rookie Andy Houston started wearing one after watching crash tests with dummies.
Seeing just how violent it is and how much their neck whips around in the car, and then seeing one with one of these on. I mean, it's a day and night difference, and I feel like you do everything you can safety-wise to keep from getting hurt.
We are not going to react for the sake of reacting, and we're not going to do something just because it's a reaction that we can take credit for. We will do it when it's the right thing to do.
Pressure also mounts from within. Mike Bianchi for the Orlando Sentinel writes, NASCAR officials are willing to haphazardly change rules and transform the aerodynamic design of the cars as they did Sunday to bunch up the field and make their races more exciting and more dangerous. If they're willing to do that, they should be willing to make the cars as safe as possible. Since the crash, Hubbard Downing Incorporated in Atlanta receives at least 35 orders for a Hans device. Among these are Penske Racing and defending Busch champion Jeff Green. The company has to increase its output from 3 to 5 devices each day. There is also renewed debate about the feasibility of soft walls.
A 3,400-pound stock car traveling 150 miles per hour exerts force equal to 200 times the force of gravity. When taking that hit, current concrete walls do not give at all. The result is that only about 5% of that violent energy is absorbed by the wall. The remaining 95% has nowhere to go but back into the car and through the driver's body. Race cars are designed to draw some of that energy away from the driver, but not nearly enough. At some point, the wall needs to take its share of the energy. Several so-called soft walls are currently in development. Some are already in place. They range in construction from space-age material to the most simple in design. Tire walls, used race tires piled and roped together, have been a mainstay at road courses for decades. They only recently debuted on an oval. Mark Blundell suffered a broken foot and a concussion during Clark's first visit to Rio in 1996. The next year, the track installed tire walls in that same turn. 2 cars ended up in the wall. The tires gave way to the impact, and both drivers walked away unharmed. But tires may be too forgiving for stock cars, which weigh twice as much as an Indy car. In 1998, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway developed and installed an impact absorption system inside Turn 4. During the IROC race that August, Ari Lyondike unwillingly tried it out.
And cars all over the track as a mammoth collision. Lyondike is involved.
Amazingly, the former Indy 500 champion walked away, but the nearly full hour of cleanup time created a reluctance to install the system full-time. Using a poor-man's version of Indy's system, many short tracks around the country employ styrofoam blocks. Again, the mess is a turnoff to many large track operators. Just last month at Watkins Glen, a combination of styrofoam, tires, and a guardrail may very well have saved the life of Busch Series driver Jimmy Johnson. But durability, withstanding more than one accident, is a problem with the current system. At least one group thinks they have the solution.
It's made basically from PVC and rubber. There are PVC pieces connect together, glue together, and piece of rubber and some accessory for connect bands.
Euro International, based in Indianapolis, produces the impact protection system, 6 by 4 foot units that can be bolted to existing concrete walls. In a head-on 60-mile-an-hour collision, the IPS system absorbed almost 95% of the impact's kinetic energy, the total opposite of current concrete walls.
The waves react and absorb the energy. The first part distribute the energy, the second part absorb the energy. In the way that you assemble the waves together in this block is the way that you absorb more energy and you make longer the impact.
At about $900 per unit, a 1.5-mile oval could be completely fitted with the IPS system for about $1.2 million. The units are very portable and highly durable, capable of sustaining 3 direct impacts before replacement. Formula One tracks at Spa, Imola, and Nürburgring have already installed IPS, In America, both Laguna Seca and Mid-Ohio have placed orders. Some American ovals have inquired about the system, but there have been no takers yet. At least 2 other major softwall systems are also available, including a cardboard-based system from racing safety pioneer Bill Simpson. With so many options, the question remains, why aren't they showing up at the track? Most track owners will not discuss the softwall topic publicly. Those that will cite cost and reliability as issues. Some, however, are simply waiting on the American sanctioning bodies to give the word.
Teresa Earnhardt releases a statement. On behalf of Taylor, Dale Jr., Carrie, Kelly, and the entire Earnhardt family, which also includes all the employees of Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, we want to sincerely thank everyone that has offered their condolences during our very tragic loss. This outpouring has been overwhelming. We kindly ask that you keep our family in your thoughts and prayers. Dale was my friend, says Richard Childress. We hunted and we raced together. We laughed and we cried together. We were able to work side by side and have the success we had for almost 20 years because first and foremost, we were friends. I will miss him always, for he was the greatest. Dale Jarrett says, I know I should feel fortunate that I had the opportunity to race with, tangle with, sometimes outrun, and like most, usually finish behind the greatest driving talent NASCAR racing has ever seen. I am thankful for that opportunity. But more importantly, I am most grateful that I had the chance to know Dale Earnhardt in a way that so many people could only dream of. He was a true friend, someone I could always depend on to give me an honest answer, and, at the very least, his opinion. 2 days earlier, Eddie Cheever tangled with Earnhardt in the closing laps of the IROC race, not knowing it would become the last race that Earnhardt would ever finish. I have known only 2 individuals whose very presence transcended the fact that they were extraordinary racing drivers, Dale Earnhardt and Ayrton Senna. No one else could fill a room like they could. As it happens, Earnhardt also had respect for Senna. On May 1st, 1994, the day we lost the 3-time Formula One world champion, Earnhardt offered his condolences from Victory Lane at Talladega.
It was a great race today for us, and we're lucky to win it. I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the family of Ayrton Senna and all his fans. He was a great racer, and it's a shame to see him go like he did, but, it's tough.
I never knew Dale personally or anything, but we feel like that we've really lost a member of our own family. And to us, he'll always be the greatest driver there is, and nobody will ever replace him. Dale Jr., I hope he carries on, and he'll carry on his name, but there'll never be another Dale Earnhardt.
Dale, he's going to be well missed, and there's a lot of good memories, and Dale was a very good person. If there was a way that he wanted to go, that was the way that he wanted to go.
You just try to say that he's in a better place. He didn't have to get that 8th championship because he's going through the Golden Gates now, and that's a championship in its own. So it's really hard. It's real hard.
Late Monday, Dale Earnhardt's autopsy is completed, and his body and personal effects are released to the family. The preliminary results are revealed. Earnhardt broke 8 ribs, his left ankle, and his breastbone. He had several scrapes to his body, blood in his ears and chest, and partially collapsed lungs. And then the fatal injury. While he hasn't broken a vertebrae, he does have a skull fracture from the front to the back of his head, a basilar skull fracture, NASCAR's 4th in 9 months. When the Volusia County Medical Examiner's Office releases photos of the inside of Earnhardt's car after the crash, Teresa Earnhardt seeks an injunction to prevent the release of her husband's autopsy photos that have been requested by the Orlando Sentinel, who claim that they are newsworthy. Her injunction is granted on Friday, but this is only the start of what will become a protracted legal battle. In an article printed in the Wichita Eagle, writer David Poole does not hold back about the cause of Sunday's tragedy. When quoting complaints both Mark Martin and Dale Jarrett had about the style of racing in the 2001 Daytona 500, he says, "The drivers will be even more outspoken about that in the days to come. They can't say anything we don't deserve to hear. Maybe this time we'll listen. Maybe we won't be so cavalier with the lives of the men we profess to admire and respect so much. Maybe we'll listen when those men tell us they're going too fast and they don't need to run 7 wide for the racing to be considered good. He continues, maybe the drivers will listen more closely too when people tell them that there are things that they can do to keep them safer in their cars. Maybe more will start figuring out ways to use them instead of coming up with excuses why they won't. Both Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart say they will run the next Sunday's race in Rockingham, joining a list of 47 entrants. The list will also include Dale Earnhardt's former team. Richard Childress won't run the number 3, and instead selects the lowest available car number that does not have a 3 in it. This is why he turns down the number 23 and chooses the 29. Vowing to never run a black car again, Childress and his team spend 4 days coming up with a white paint scheme with black numbers. The Chevrolet still carries all of Earnhardt's sponsors, including Sonic, which signed just days before the 500. The team won't use any of their uniforms from Daytona. The driver will wear a red and black fire suit, the pit crew in white, neither of them carrying any logos. The team even makes a new car cover with the 29 on it, ready if needed for Rockingham. Both the scheme and its driver have yet to be revealed, though a day earlier a team member speaking on condition of anonymity says Kevin Harvick will drive. This is not as surprising as it first appears. In Daytona, Harvick's Cup debut was already scheduled to come 2 rounds later in Atlanta, in a part-time third Childress entry that would go full-time in 2002. Now the 25-year-old Harvick, still preparing to marry his fiancée Delana the following Wednesday in Las Vegas, will run full-time in both Winston Cup and the Busch Series, an already daunting feat made even more so. I watched Dale drive when I was growing up, from when I was 5 years old, says Harvick. He was a hero to me and a friend. I know he would want me to drive the heck out of the car. As it happens, the car he will drive the heck out of is the same one with which Dale Earnhardt beat Bobby Labonte in a photo finish at Atlanta the previous March, a car that hadn't been run since that day. Childress debated about using it, but decides they owe it to their supporters to run their best car in the race. Other teams also face a difficult week as they try to focus on the business at hand. Neither Kurt Busch nor Kenny Wallace have a sponsor, though Wallace will again share Hills Brothers backing with Don Levy Racing for the following week's race in Vegas. Jerry Nadeau and Jason Leffler have to make do with backup crew chiefs due to their post-qualifying infractions at Daytona. Nadeau gets Gordon Gibbs, the chief mechanic, while Leffler brings on former Hendrick Motorsports crew chief Andy Graves. At PPI Motorsports, Cal Wells requires his 2 pit crews wear helmets. After one of Roush's teams refused to use helmets a year earlier, Wells commissions lighter helmets provided by a former IndyCar driver turned safety innovator, Bill Simpson of Simpson Performance Products. The Dodge teams dispute NASCAR's wind tunnel results from Daytona, which showed their clear advantage over the other makes. Among these voices is Ray Evernhams, who's fuming over the loss of Earnhardt. I feel hurt because I've lost a friend that I respected, he says. I also feel almost mad or cheated because I don't get to compete against the best anymore. If we go to Rockingham and we win Sunday to get our first win for Dodge, it's not going to be the same because I will not have gotten to beat Earnhardt. And I'm not the only one who's going to feel that way. I think it's also getting to be felt by Gordon and Dale Jarrett and Jeff Burton and everybody else. A win is not going to mean the same as it did before. Some of my competitive fire is gone. I'll never get to compete against the best again. More tributes are proposed for Rockingham. Ward Burton suggests painting the pace car black and putting a number 3 on it. Tommy Baldwin Jr., Ward's crew chief, says he'd like to keep the first stall empty all season, although by rule at the time that stall goes to the defending series champion, Bobby Labonte. There's speculation that all 3 DEI cars will be painted black for the race, but since these Rockingham cars were already painted and prepared before Daytona, the plan is abandoned. Instead, Teresa Earnhardt coordinates with John McKenzie at Motorsports Designs to come up with 5 possible decals that all teams could run. They settle on 2 of them, one for the Childress and DEI entries, and another for the rest of the field. Still other decals are placed on cars' dashboards. NASCAR states they won't mandate every team run these decals. They don't have to. Bill Jordan, owner of longtime Childress sponsor Realtree Outdoors, confirms a rumor that Richard Childress will run a ceremonial lap in Dale Earnhardt's black number 3, then retire the scheme after. Dave Marcus is reportedly on standby to drive in Childress's place should the emotions be too much. Ultimately, they are. The Earnhardt family steps in, saying they aren't ready to see the car on track so soon after the accident. The ceremonial lap won't happen until 2003, and it will instead be as a salute to departing title sponsor Winston.
You know, I know that he's going to, I know how he felt about God, and he believed in God, and so I know where he's going, and so he's just there before we are.
As preparations are made at the Cavalry Church in Charlotte for a public funeral, Dale Earnhardt's body is laid to rest in a private ceremony attended exclusively by his family. At the family's request, the exact location of the gravesite isn't disclosed. That night in Mooresville, teams load their cars onto haulers for the short trip to Rockingham.
Dale Earnhardt really personifies what NASCAR racing is all about. He'll never be replaced. He was a champion. He was a person that NASCAR fans could all relate to.
Beginning on Monday morning, after we heard of the terrible accident, we put out a register because people have to grieve in their own way. And sometimes just the sheer nature of signing the name does wonders for them.
I'd like to have us all have a moment of silence in remembering Dale Earnhardt. After that moment of silence, on the count of three, I'd like everyone to release their balloons. 1, 2, 3.
Our thoughts and our prayers are with the Earnhardt family. We're just sorry that this happens to be the next race after such a tragic event happened, but at the same time it gives us an opportunity to show NASCAR and show the fans how much we really do care about them.
In Daytona Beach, Florida, the Reverend Hal Marchman, who days earlier delivered the invocation at the Daytona 500, hosts a memorial service for local fans. Dale is run, and run well, he says, and now he's safe in the arms of God. Another congregation of 3,000 gathers at Cavalry Church. Among those in attendance are Terry and Bobby Labonte, Daryl and Michael Waltrip, Rusty Wallace, Jerry Nadeau, Bobby and Donnie Allison, Junior Johnson, and Sterling Marlin. President Bush sends his aide Joe Albaugh. I am saddened by the untimely loss of this American legend and want to express my deepest sympathy to his family, friends, and fans, the president writes. 138 floral arrangements decorate the altar. Sitting in one of the pews is legendary journalist and broadcaster Chris Economaki. Before the services begin, he shares a particularly poignant story with a friend. It was 1938, Flemington Fairgrounds in New Jersey, he said. It was a Sunday afternoon. I got to the racetrack about 1 o'clock, checked in with a woman named Ma Green who ran the pits. I said, "Who's quick, Ma?" She named the driver who was fastest in practice, second fastest, third fastest. Then she said, "And Chet Gardner got killed in the morning practice." I said, "Oh, that's too bad." And that was it. And the conversation continued. It was during the Great Depression. Pennies bought things. Life, too, was cheap. He then looked at the gathering crowd as it reached well over the 3,000 attendees. Life is no longer cheap, he says. Television cameras are allowed in, and Mike Joy and Ken Squire host the services.
It is a cold day in the Carolinas, and the sky is crying rain. We have gathered at the gleaming Calvary Church in South Charlotte. In many ways, a great distance from the small St. Mark's in Mooresville, where the Earnhardt family spent yesterday to say their goodbyes. 6,200 seats are filling with Dale's NASCAR family. Hello and welcome to a celebration of the life of Dale Earnhardt. I'm Mike Joy, joined by Ken Squire. This service was organized by Dale's family and close associates, so that Dale's extended family, his NASCAR family, can share and achieve closure. Moved by the spontaneous outpouring of emotional fans, the homemade memorials, and the constant stream of saddened supporters past Dale Earnhardt Inc. in Mooresville, the family has agreed to this one-time live telecast of this service because the Earnhardts also wanted to reach out to Dale's many grieving fans to help you achieve closure and offer you a glimpse of this memorial.
This is going to be a little different than what television coverage usually provides. The family agreed to allow our electronic neighborhood in for this special program, so there's no fancy camera angles, no tight close-ups. We are simply part of a caring congregation that's gathered here, gathered wherever people want to take a moment or two today to remember Dale Earnhardt.
There's an arrangement there from the Roper family, who lost their son on the racetrack this past summer. Sunday night on Fox Sports Net, when we had to go on with cheerful news, words came, I knew not from where, but they'd been repeated often, and I really had to dig, in saying that the compass of this sport has lost its true north. Those words rattled in my head, and the words about true north come from a song by one of Nashville's best singer-songwriters and a racer, John Hyatt, who wrote a song called Drive South. Susie Boggess made it a hit, talking about looking for our true north with our head in the clouds and being just a little off course. The compass words I knew came not from where until in the planning of this show, we went up to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, and this is the logo, the centerpiece of which is a compass.
One of the traditions of racing, which I think is greatly misunderstood, is the business of when a comrade falls, one goes forward, one goes on. And as long as I know, over 50 years that I've been in this game, that's what I've always known and recognized, that if a comrade falls, you pick yourself up and you perform at the highest level at which you can in the very next event, and that is the finest tribute you can pay to the comrade who has fallen. I've always thought that was part of the American way. It's a serious game, and they play it in a serious manner. This is not a child or adolescent game. It's always been a serious game. And Earnhardt knew that, and it registered with him. Wilt Browning once wrote about Earnhardt. He said, if you want drama, you get Earnhardt. And if you want 500 miles on the ragged edge, you get Earnhardt. If you want reckless abandon, you get Earnhardt. I think Tom Wolfe may have been wrong about who was the last American hero. He claimed it as Junior Johnson in that wonderful article he wrote. But I think a lot of people today are going to respond to what has happened this past week in Daytona, that this is a true American hero.
I guess it's been too much fun, but we've shared and we've won. And yes, the best is yet to come. Goodbye, goodbye, till I see you again. Goodbye, goodbye, I love, and I'll miss you till then. That one word hurts so bad when you lose a friend you've had, but you keep the faith and you pray to return. Goodbye, goodbye, I love, and I'll miss you till then.
I am thankful to be a part of this homegoing celebration memorial for Dale Earnhardt. As his hometown pastor, St. Mark's feels that we've lost a church member and a very special friend. Our prayers and our concerns go out to everyone who knew and loved Dale. At this time, let us bow our hearts and our minds and pray together the prayer that our Lord Jesus Christ taught his disciples. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
It's a simple ceremony lasting just 22 minutes, after which many of the attendees prepare to return to racing.
Dale Earnhardt's NASCAR family file out of the Calvary Church and prepare to go on to Rockingham, where the series will race this weekend. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and the other Earnhardt Incorporated cars will race. Richard Childress Racing will be there to compete. And many people in the sport have taken guidance from the answer to the question that we all ask: what would Dale do? And we're guided by the events of February 1994, when Dale lost best friend Neil Bonnet on the racetrack in a practice crash at Daytona. Earnhardt was stoic, said little, kept feelings to himself inside, and climbed back into the car the next day and raced. And everyone in this sport today is mindful of that and guided by it. So we will go on to Rockingham, not because we truly wish to, but because we wish to honor the memory of one of the sport's great champions in a fashion in which he honored his late friend.
There's been some comment in this past week about Sterling Marlin, and Michael Waltrip rose to his defense the other day, and I think it's only fair that we should mention that here as we come to conclusion and we have an extra moment or two. This was a racing incident, and I think everyone in the racing fraternity totally understands that. Sometimes it's hard to grasp, but again, you have to go back to Richard Petty. When his grandson Adam lost his life up in New Hampshire 10 months ago, someone a couple of weeks later said, well, what have you discovered? What are you learning about the thing? And Richard said, stop. He said, we are not interested in the past. We have lost Adam, and now we must go on. And he dropped all of that baggage. And he did go on, and that family has gone on, and Kyle raced with his son's number and finished 16th. And again, I think we all must go on, and there's no pointing fingers. When you've got three guys, great racers, running 180 miles an hour into turn 3 at Daytona, things do happen. And such they did this past weekend. And I hope that everyone can find peace in their hearts about this incident that took the life of Dale. Bill, about 10 seconds away from maybe the greatest Daytona 500 that we've seen in 43 years, and then this. Stunning, staggering, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it also, I kind of apologized to him the other day. Not that I had any, could have changed things, but Michael Waltrip, he's been trying so long, and a little bit on Dale Earnhardt. I asked him this past February in Daytona. I had dinner one night, and I said, is Michael the right guy for that car? He said, absolutely. He said he's going to win races in that car.
Yeah, Jeff Hammond picked him to win that race, and by George, he did it. And he's such a good spokesman and such a good representative. But how about you? Seems to me that among all the people that race in NASCAR, that Earnhardt had become one of the closest to you.
He had. And I got to know him really when he and Jeff Bodine made a kind of a trip to Daytona.
It was a trip to the woodshed, wasn't it?
Well, I don't like to use that term for big boys,
right.
You know. But we had to put the fire out a little bit. They were kind of banging on each other from I guess about 2-3 weeks up here in Charlotte. So I had them come down with their car owners, and I reminded them that the sport is going to go on, whether or not they're part of it or not. It was going on before they were a part of it, and will go on afterwards, and that's the way it should be. It's going to go on after I'm gone and after the two of y'all are gone. So that's the way life is, and I think Dale accepted that at that time. It wasn't just the next race was all as important.
Marty, we could not, of course, show our viewers more than what Dale Earnhardt Productions gave us today of the memorial service, but you were there. Can you tell us who else was and what it was like?
Yes, several NASCAR Winston Cup drivers were in attendance today. Dale Earnhardt's best friends, Michael Waltrip, Bobby Labonte, Rusty Wallace, of course, Dale Earnhardt Jr., his wife Teresa, even country bands. Brooks and Dunn and Randy Owen of the band Alabama were there. They did a special tribute song. The mood was very solemn and somber today. People sobbed and people sat stone-faced as everybody realized the magnitude of losing the greatest stock car driver that ever lived.
When you talk about some of these big names who were there, even an emotional moment for them, even though most of those men had competed with Earnhardt over the years?
Yes, his competitors take this very hard. It's not only his best friend, but he paved the way for several of those guys to make it to the level they're at right now. So they're taking it very, very hard right now.
I understand that you know Dale Jr. yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how the family is doing?
Yes, ma'am. They're doing very well. A good friend of mine who raced in the NASCAR Busch Series against Dale Jr. and is one of his best friends. I just spoke with him a few moments ago, and he said the family's taking it very well. Teresa's doing very well. She's been very strong, and Dale Jr. also has been very, very strong, and they're just going to pick up and keep doing what Dale would have them to do, and that's go racing next weekend at Rockingham.
Yeah, Rockingham is coming up this weekend, and I guess they're ready to go. Marty Smith of NASCAR.com, thanks very much for your insight, joining us from Charlotte today after the service for Dale Earnhardt.
You know, I'd like to say one thing that, you know, Dale Earnhardt was probably the best race car driver there ever is going to be in NASCAR, and nobody will ever replace him, and I think we all know that. So I would hope that you guys don't expect me to replace him because nobody ever will.
At 9:30 a.m. on Friday, track activity begins at Rockingham with opening practice for the Busch Series. The Busch cars are the only ones on track for Friday, with qualifying and final practice to follow in the afternoon. In the busy midway, fans swarmed Dale Earnhardt's souvenir hauler and began to write messages on it in felt pen. At the same time, security reports that Sterling Marlin's own souvenir hauler had been defaced. But Don Wade, the hauler's driver, says these messages are all positive, saying good luck, and we know it wasn't your fault. Outside the front gates, more items are left by fans beneath the granite boulder bearing the names of past Rockingham winners, including Dale Earnhardt, who won there in 1987, 1994, and 1996. Programs for the race were printed before the Daytona 500. They become a glimpse into an alternate reality, one so suddenly changed. Earnhardt's car is still listed on the possible entries, scanner frequency 469.0125. An ad for Coca-Cola features both Dale and Teresa. And he's on the cover, not as tribute, but to represent his runner-up finish to Bobby Labonte, both in the 2000 race and the championship. As at Daytona, the Rockingham program contains the same driver profile by Richard Biebrick, titled Earnhardt Bucking Time in Quest for Record. The title refers to Earnhardt's pursuit of an 8th championship. His 94 win at Rockingham saw him clinch his record 7th. I feel good in the race car and feel that the competitive drive is still in me, said Earnhardt in the feature. I know that there are a good 4 or 5 years still in me. The caption for the photo of his iconic Chevrolet echoes this, saying it, quote, can be counted on to intimidate the rest of the field for a few more years. The only scar from Daytona is a card slipped into each copy of the program, which reads, North Carolina Speedway and International Speedway Corporation would like to extend our deepest sympathy to the family of Dale Earnhardt. Many of the preparations for our Dura Lube 400 race weekend, including our tickets, credentials, and programs, were completed prior to the running of the Daytona 500 last weekend and bear reference to this great champion. We appreciate your understanding as we remember our friend. On the back of the card is the family's request that in lieu of flowers, donations in her husband's honor go to the Carolina Foundation. It is on Friday that Dale Earnhardt Jr. makes his first extended statement since the crash.
I do want to say that any notion or any idea that or any blame placed upon anyone, whether it be Sterling Marlin or anybody else for that matter, is ridiculous and will not be tolerated. I just think it's completely incredible that some of the things that I've heard or been told about.
I miss my father, and I cried for him out of my own selfish pity, he said. We just have to remember he's in a better place than we all want to be. We've had to take some very deep breaths and get everything in perspective, and it's really been a difficult time. The main focus is to try to maintain and progress with the vision my father had with Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. There's a rumor that one driver in the garage area is so upset with Earnhardt's death that they're planning to retire immediately. Some believe it's Ken Schrader, who was first to the accident scene. A TV station in Nashville believes it's Rusty Wallace, who enters the race third in points after he came from behind twice during the 500. I'd be lying if I said I haven't thought about it, said Wallace of retirement. I don't need to race any longer. I enjoy racing. Patty would probably be just as happy if I didn't race at all right now, but this is what I do for a living. I've been pretty fortunate my whole life and have been real successful on the track and off the track, so I am going to continue on. Wallace would later reveal that Bill France Jr. had been leaning on him to retire, and that these efforts grew stronger after Earnhardt's death. But as of this day in 2001, the start of Rusty's Last Call Tour is still another 4 years away. But the biggest story comes from the developing crash investigation. In a press conference, NASCAR reveals that Earnhardt's left side lap belt, made by Simpson Performance Products, had come apart in the crash.
There was a broken left lap belt. We don't know why, we don't know how, we don't know when yet. All we know is that there was a broken belt at this point.
The lap belt typically, or in all cases, connects to the roll cage on the right side. It would come up. This buckle would be about where your belt buckle would be. And then this side would connect to the roll cage on the left side. What the people that came to the scene to Dale Earnhardt's aid found was the buckle was latched like this. And what we found later on in looking at the car was that when they unbuckled it, this piece ended up on the floor of the car and this piece was still connected to the roll cage. It was separated right in this area. We've never seen it, and we've talked to people who are in the business to produce lap belts who have told us they've never seen it. So in 52 years of NASCAR, Winston Cup racing, this is the first one of these that we've seen.
If we knew that there was something that we could do, we would do it. But inasmuch as that all we know at this point that we've got a separated lap belt, that in the 52-year history of this sport and in the industry that develops these parts and pieces has never seen before, we don't have a conclusion today that gives us the ability to react to it.
Dr. Steve Bohannon, who has received increased notoriety since Sunday, believes the belt breaking in this manner could have thrown Earnhardt's body forward and to the right on impact, causing his chest to strike the steering wheel. If his restraint system, his belt, had held, he would have had a much better chance of survival, he says. Just like that, Bill Simpson, a pioneer in safety equipment, supplants Sterling Marlin as the scapegoat for the tragedy. Having tested and produced seatbelts for the motorsports industry for more than 43 years, we have never seen a seatbelt come apart in the manner that occurred, says Simpson. Our seatbelts, when properly installed, won't fail. While Larry McReynolds says he's never had any issues with Simpson's products, and Richard Childress says the belt was brand new, manufactured at the same time as the car in November of 2000, this does little to steer attention away from Simpson himself.
Fox Sports Net welcomes you to a cool and sunny winter day here at the place that racing fans call The Rock, Rockingham, North Carolina. Today, with the memory of Dale Earnhardt still fresh on everyone's mind, Winston Cup cars will attempt to qualify and battle for the pole in tomorrow's Winston Cup stop here in Rockingham.
On Saturday, the Winston Cup portion of the weekend begins. Carl Long and Joe Bessie have withdrawn, leaving 45 drivers entered for 43 spots. During inspection, Kenny Wallace's Pontiac is discovered to have an unapproved fuel cell check valve. Todd Bodine says he and his fellow drivers have arranged a safety meeting, but doesn't go into detail about what will be discussed. Among those joining the meeting is Ricky Rudd. Drivers alone can't make things happen, says Rudd. We need NASCAR's involvement, and they're looking at safety every day. But then you need some outside people, and everyone needs to sit down for a brainstorming session to see if there's anything we can do. Jeff Burton anticipates NASCAR will change their superspeedway package before the upcoming Talladega race in April. A rumor soon follows that NASCAR will eliminate the roof spoiler and rear spoiler flanges while reducing the restrictor plate to 7/8 of an inch, putting the cars back to their arrangement from the July 2000 race in Daytona, which Burton won. Dr. Robert Cantu, a head injury specialist at Massachusetts Emerson Hospital, criticizes NASCAR's slow response to safety measures. NASCAR continues to talk about restrictor plates and kill switches and other things that make the sport more competitive, yet they continue to leave the safety up to the teams and drivers. Dr. Steve Olvey, medical director for CART, points to how differently safety is handled in open-wheel racing. Our philosophy is that there is an obligation on the part of the sanctioning body to provide as much information on safety and injury prevention to the drivers and teams. We don't have that capability with NASCAR. Mike Helton responds. If a group of doctors from Indianapolis thinks we ought to do it better, our recommendation to them is to understand how we do it first, he says. When something happens, it's not just 2 or 3 NASCAR guys standing around there eating a donut over the hood of a car saying, "Dadgun, that thing hit hard." Who is there better to do that inspection than the organization that inspects these cars every weekend? NASCAR has another fire to put out. Ken Barlow, a racing insider from Virginia, makes a public statement that the cars in the Cup Series are too rigid due to the use of chrome mully box tubing, a harder variety of steel that breaks before it bends. While unsure if Earnhardt's car was made of the material, he's also concerned about the use of cross-triangulation in the motor mounts, a building process that makes those parts more rigid. On the condition of anonymity, 2 Cup mechanics say Barlow's claims may be true. Barlow is himself problematic to NASCAR, as the sanctioning body had reportedly caught him installing traction control systems for Cup teams. They condoned it at the Cup level, Barlow said, but they didn't want traction control getting into the short track level. For many years, teams had overlooked testing at Rockingham in favor of Daytona, but the 2001 season saw 18 of the 45 entries test the track. Brett Bodine barely gets any track time as his transmission and rear gear fail during practice. Roush continues to struggle, with Matt Kenseth placing 40th on the speed charts, not far from 45th and last place Hut Strickland in the Donlevy car. The Dodges aren't nearly as fast as they were at Daytona. The only Intrepid in the top 10 belongs to rookie Casey Atwood, who takes 9th. Further back is Dave Blaney, whose Amoco car is one of the first downforce track Dodges built by Bill Davis Racing. Robbie Gordon runs the same Kodak Chevrolet that Bobby Hamilton ran at Rockingham the previous year when he led 42 laps before the distributor failed. Dale Jarrett runs the same car he drove to victory at the Rock the previous October. The only changes made are to the paint scheme. Perhaps the oldest car in the field, ironically, belongs to Dodge driver Stacy Compton. Built in 1994, the chassis was first converted to a show car, then sold to PPI Motorsports, who then sold it back. Overshadowed by the Earnhardt tragedy, Compton slipped through the wreck to finish 10th in the Daytona 500, his first top 10 finish in his 33rd Cup start. For the rest of Compton's career, he'll finish no better. Early in the session, Steve Park blows an engine after just 1 lap. The Pennzoil crew makes a quick change, sends him back out, and Park puts up the fastest lap of the day. Ranking second is Bobby Labonte, the defending winner of the Dura Lube 400. Labonte isn't running the same car which he won that race. That Pontiac was destroyed after his throttle hung during practice at Darlington. Instead, he runs a car that last went out at Phoenix. Both Labonte and teammate Tony Stewart, still aching from his Daytona wreck, are now wearing 6-point seatbelts instead of 5. Labonte is trying out another new piece of safety equipment. Bobby Hutchins, an engineer at the Childress team, comes up with a system of suspender-like straps that go around a driver's waist and chest. One set of hooks attached to the driver's helmet, the other paired to the lap belt. Hutchins presents a set for Kevin Harvick and Mike Skinner, before Labonte and Elliott Sadler request a set. The yet unnamed product, soon to be called the Hutchins device, gains high marks early for not being as uncomfortable as the Hans. Several drivers receive a standing ovation as they speed by, not just Michael Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt Jr., but also Kevin Harvick, who logs his first laps in the 29 car. Another round of cheers is for Sterling Marlin. Late in the session, after putting up the 6th fastest time, Waltrip finds trouble. The team hurriedly prepares a backup car for qualifying, where for the first time there will be just one round, with 2 laps to make it count. And despite his win in the Daytona 500, the 2,000 owner points still determine provisionals, meaning Waltrip's new team still must time in 36th or better. Fortunately for both driver and crew, Waltrip is excused from his 3rd spot in line, and his backup had been tested at Rockingham before. At 10:40 a.m., following a brief delay for a Fox Sports crew making repairs to a RoboCam, Ward Burton is the first to time into the field. 2 cars later, Ricky Rudd bests his time, followed right after by Bobby Labonte. Another 7 cars later comes Steve Park.
He's into one real hard, but down on the bottom, he picked the throttle up. He's not fighting the car off at 2 over there, and see how he's right around the white line coming through 3 and 4. Assuming he's back in the throttle like he should be, it's going to be a good lap.
I believe it is going to be a good one.
It's the quickest so far, 23.410, 156.
Until the track's heating up, even though he was fastest in practice, that's almost a 10th slower than he run on the cooler temperatures this morning. Tires gripped a little better on the 2nd lap this morning with the cool weather.
The car really looks good. It's right around the bottom of the racetrack. Right now it's down to the white line, and it's got plenty of power, and he's on the pole.
2nd lap is slower by 9/100ths of a second, so Steve Park is quickest so far. That bumps Bobby Labonte off the pole. Matt?
Many drivers struggle for speed, knowing just one of their 2 laps will be good enough. Elliott Sadler nearly loses control running below the apron. Mike Skinner struggles even more.
Our hearts go out especially to Ken Schrader and Mike Skinner. Those were the 2 drivers who both stopped at the accident scene. Schrader was part of the accident. Skinner was instructed by his and Earnhardt's car owner, Richard Childress, take another lap around, stop, tell me what's going on, I can't get any information. And I think their memories of what happened are more vivid than the rest of us. That Richard Childress team probably feels this loss more than any other at this speedway. If Mike Skinner is last in the qualifying line, please don't attribute that to performance.
The 21st car on track, Jeff Gordon, tries a different strategy.
Times when everything's kind of going haywire and everybody's drawing bad numbers, you can't find anybody who wants to draw it, so a lot of times they'll let NASCAR do it for you.
Kind of like being at the craps table.
There's no question. We let David Smith, our team manager.
What's Jeff Gordon doing back there? I mean, he's not even...
he's not up to speed.
He's coming around, and he's going to throw away this lap.
That's what he's going to do, because it's important getting up to speed, coming to take the green flag.
But Ricky Craven was 19th fastest.
I think it... see, Jeff backed off. I can hear it way back here. He's going to get some heat in those tires. He's got a different approach to this thing than everybody else has had.
This is a Daytona-style qualifying for Gordon, where he's using his first lap just to get up to speed, but not to abuse those tires.
I think that's the plan. He probably went out with a little bit lower air pressure, get some air pressure built up. Now he's going to come down and he'll stand on that bad boy.
It's probably not going to be a good lap, but he really got through 3 and 4 coming to take the white flag, which is important.
Yeah, well, he's got his momentum up. He wants to get a run to the flag, and this will be interesting to see how it works out. I wondered if anybody would try something like this.
First lap, 24.033, 20th quickest. This will have to be the lap for Gordon.
It's there too, buddy.
A little slower through 3 and 4. Tires lost some grip.
And he is...
He's on the pole, though.
Quicker!
He's on the pole.
It's there. All right, now
23.401. That's 9/1000ths faster than Steve Park.
Now, if I'm a crew chief, I'm going down my driver. Throw away the first lap. Throw away the first lap.
Yeah.
7 cars later comes Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Trying to carry on a family tradition. He's doing a great job of it. I've been proud of how he's handled himself. Yeah, standing ovation from the crowd as he goes by. He's got to be so emotionally unprepared for this weekend. Drained.
But yet, getting back in that car, something he's familiar with doing, that's part of the healing process.
It's therapy.
Don't know about 1 and 2. Pretty decent through 3 and 4.
23.777, 15th fastest, a credible lap.
He'll be okay with that. I'm sure he'll be not thrilled, but he'll be happy.
He'll be solidly in the field.
Exactly. This is a better looking lap, Larry. I don't know what his time's going to be like, but it's a better looking lap.
Quite a bit slower through 3 and 4, though.
And it's about 7/100 slower. So Earnhardt Jr., 15th fastest. Dick Berggren.
Kevin Harvick, your thoughts on this qualifying run?
I tell you what, this Goodwrench car, just still trying to get used to it. You know, we ran Rockingham eats up the tires so much that we only ran a couple laps hard. So we're just going to go out there and give it everything we've got, and we don't know what we've got, so we're going to find out.
Okay, good luck with it, Kevin.
Soon after, following a mad thrash by the DEI crew, Michael Waltrip's backup car rolls onto the grid.
This is an all-or-nothing run for Michael Waltrip. As a new team, the number 15 has no provisional points from the year 2000 to fall back on. He has to time his way into the show.
Yes, he does. He's the Daytona 500 winner. He's the leader in the points, taking the green flag. Come on, my boy.
And he was 4th fastest in practice, boy, way high. And you know, I was just going to say, the worst thing about unloading a backup car at Rockingham is the possibility of the car bottoming out when you go off in the corner, and that'll just kill your whole lap.
So many things. The brakes, the brakes could be not working properly. There's so many things that could be wrong with the car.
But you have to trust it, and you have to drive it on in there. So here's the first lap for Michael, 30th, 23.896.
He's coming around. He's getting with it now. He felt her out in the first turn. He got up against the fence off turn 2. I tell you, the kid's driving his heart out, though. He's giving her all she got.
Hot Strickland on the bubble.
It's going to be a lot better lap if he...
Real good through 3 and 4. He's
he hit the wall.
But he got loose right there. Bang.
Then he hit the wall.
It's okay. That's okay, my man.
Second lap is 6th fastest.
Wow.
Michael Waltrip. 23.563.
Then comes Harvick.
On the speedway is Kevin Harvick out of Bakersfield, California. This is the Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet.
And he is going to have something. He's going to have immediate fan support. He's going to have a lot of people pulling for him. And there's the monument for Dale right out in front of the racetrack out here. People have been so gracious and so kind to that family and what has happened. It just makes my heart feel so good.
The last time this race car saw the racetrack was with Dale winning Atlanta against Bobby Labonte at a photo finish last March. He's not been on the racetrack since.
First lap is 31st, 23.892 for Harvick. That should safely get him into the show. Now this car will have the number 3's provisional position if needed, even though it carries 29.
Kevin and his fiancée going to get married in Las Vegas next weekend.
He saw Michael do that. Worked for him.
Almost lost the car. And the second lap, as a result, is slow. So Harvick is 31st fastest. That bumps Todd Bodine, who is 39th in owner points and may be headed home. Let's watch this run off turn 4 again.
It's all the way up on the straightaway, and that is what you call very, very loose.
Yeah, that is a product of trying to get back in the gas way over in before you even get to the middle of the corner and carry a lot of speed off the corner, and the car just won't, the track won't hold it.
More speed than the tires will take.
The tires and the track just won't hold that kind of speed. Good idea, it just doesn't work.
The last car on track belongs to Ken Schrader, who drives a brand new car.
Now go on the racetrack after a heart-wrenching end to the Daytona 500. Rumors of retirement circulated this week, but you know, Schrader probably runs more races than a year in different types of cars than anyone in the Winston Cup garage.
There's been times when things haven't gone my way and I get down and depressed and kind of dejected, and I'd want to retire too. But once you have time to get all that under control, cooler heads prevail and you come back to the racetrack. That's the best place for you right now. This is the best therapy Kenny could have, especially if he has a good run.
Jeff Gordon wins the pole, the 34th of his career. Harvick secures the 36th spot, the last car in on speed. Sent home are Andy Houston and Kyle Petty. By switching teams in the aftermath of Adams' death, his number 45 is bumped out, while Buckshot Jones makes the show in the number 44. Making their first starts of the year along with Kevin Harvick are Rick Mast, Todd Bodine, and Hut Strickland. After qualifying comes a Busch Series race, the Alltel 200. It's a short field as only 42 teams arrive to contest the 43-car lineup. The front row features a pair of newcomers. On the pole is defending Truck Series champion Greg Biffle, who's making his first Busch Series start since 1996. Driver, sponsor, and crew have been promoted by Jack Roush to the number 60 team, made famous by Mark Martin, and is running the same chassis with which Jeff Burton nearly won at Rockingham the previous fall. That car nearly comes to grief in happy hour, as Biffle spins out, but avoids serious damage. To Biffle's outside rolls Ryan Newman in his first ever Busch start. Newman is paired with crew chief Matt Borland, who Don Miller brought over from IndyCar due to his similar background in engineering to Newman. Fresh off his win in Daytona's ARCA 200, Newman looks to impress in his debut, but inexperience on the treacherous Rockingham track, combined with a new harder tire and a 150 horsepower increase from the 2000 package, leads to early trouble.
Getting set to go green. For 200 miles, 197 laps, we're racing at the Rock. Off turn 4 toward the middle of the pack. That would be the 55.
Oh, got one up high down in turn 2.
Whoa, that's Ryan Newman spinning right in front of the field.
Right down the track he went. I think everybody's going to get through unscathed if it back up. Whoa, wait a minute, back up here, guys.
He's already slipped up and then came down the pit lane. Uh-oh. The 55 continues to smoke. That is before the accident, that happening to Mark Green's car.
On top of damage to his front valence, Newman's spin alters his tire strategy. With just 3 sets per team, Newman has to stretch a set much longer than he'd like. With 19 laps to go, Newman is about to lose a lap to Jeff Green. Green, despite a flu outbreak amongst his crew, has clawed his way past the dominant Buckshot Jones entry of Todd Bodine. But Green is about to discover how hard Newman is to pass.
Can't get a run on him off the corner.
There's Keller's teammate, Jeff Green, putting Newman a lap down.
And look at here, the black car right on Jeff Green in the 00 fighting this lap traffic. He's caught him, took about 2 seconds back, but he's up on his rear bumper while Ryan Newman's trying to stay on the lead lap.
Jeff can't get to the bottom to get around Newman, and so Newman's running, keeping him pinned to the bottom, and it allowed Todd to close up.
Newman goes up the hill, and here comes Green and Todd Bodine.
Right there, Jeff needs to be wide open, and he can't hold it wide open because he pushes out into the 02.
And Ryan Newman doing everything he can with those old tires to stay on the lead lap. Todd Bodine's going to the bottom, going to try to get the lead here all the way below the white line, and they touch.
And Jeff Green did the smart thing. He pedaled it. He got out of town.
Another wreck draws the caution with 14 laps to go, and now Green is the one stranded on old tires.
Just told his driver, Jeff Green, give it all you got, but bring it home.
That's right.
Todd Bodine in the 0 car, 3 wide, going into turn 2, going by Kevin Harvick. This is fresh tires. He took advantage of it as soon as he could, going through 1 and 2.
Yeah, he got a great run off of turn 2, got him 3 wide down the back, and he will be on his way to victory.
Bodine just uncorked the bottle coming off turn 2, past 2 cars, and now goes for the lead. Todd Bodine rockets past Jeff Green for the lead.
The race is red flagged for a green-white checkered finish. Todd Bodine over Kevin Harvick.
Getting set for the restart. There'll be 2 laps to go. As Todd Bodine hauls him off to turn 1. Here comes Biffle looking for second.
Harvick got a terrible start. Todd kind of got a jump, and Harvick panicked and near lost second place.
Now, you saw the smoke there. That's where they went through the oil dry, where they put it down on that water and oil from Tim Feedle's car a while ago.
Harvick's got it hammered down. He's coming after him. He's got the white flag showing him in the face.
It's Todd Bodine's to lose as Jeff Green continues to give up spots. Jeff Purvis goes back past him. Last lap.
Is digging hard.
Single file, the log jams at Jeff Green. 2 Two cars fight right behind him, but off turn 4, the driver who led 145 laps today, Todd Bodine, gets his second Rockingham win.
Yeah, Todd deserved to win that one. Had a dominant car all day, did a great job. Pit strategy was good.
Great run by Kevin Harvick to finish second. Greg Biffle from the front row finishes third. Kenny Wallace is fourth. Bobby Hamilton Jr. fifth ahead of Jeff Purvis.
Well, I knew we had a good enough car. All I had to do was hold the bottom, not make a mistake, and we were going to beat them. I knew that, and I'm sure Kevin was a little afraid after last week. He didn't want to get too close to me.
Now, the last time you won a race here, you only led the last few feet. Today, you dominated. What was the difference between those two races?
Well, this car was just incredible right from the start. We unloaded fast, made very, very minor adjustments to the car, got it even faster. Gary did a great job, and this whole group of guys. It was just the right day. I mean, you have to have everything go right to get this thing done and get it in victory lane, and we had everything go right today. Had great pit stops too, guys.
You did indeed, with his daughter Ashley. Let's go to Steve.
After the Busch race comes happy hour, or final practice. Combining Goodyear's harder tire with more than half the teams without any testing at the track, they continue to make massive setup changes. So many, in fact, that teams ask NASCAR to lengthen the session, which is done. Rusty Wallace changes to a smaller front sway bar. Michael Waltrip's crew has 13 springs to choose from. Tony Stewart's not happy with how his feet slip around on the floorboards. Kevin Harvick requests the same shock setup from his runner-up finish in the Busch race. The booth, with its newly retired driver and 2 crew chiefs, cobbled together a setup of their own.
All right, Larry. This tire's hard. I like hard tires. That's what I grew up racing on. This tire's hard. I could fix Jeff Burton's car. I think I could fix maybe Steve Parks, maybe even Ricky Craven's. I don't know. But I'd put me an 18 in the right front.
1,800-pound spring.
I'd put me a 1,200 in the left front.
Yeah, okay. I might want to stiffen that thing up just a little bit. Maybe a 13.
Well, we can talk about that after practice. So I'd put me a 375 in the right rear, and I'd put me a 325 in the left rear, and I'd rubber those rears up.
Maybe how much front sway bar you want?
Oh, I'm a big advocate. I think a big bar, you can't go wrong with a big bar. I'm gonna have at least a 7/16, inch and 7/16, but I might even go to a 5/8.
And we're going to have to talk about that too, Jeff. That sounds a little big on front sway bar, don't it, Jeff?
Well, especially if you got a problem with the car not wanting to turn to the front.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking in the long run, hard tires. I want my car to stay tight. I want my car to do one thing. I don't want it pushing and loose. I just want it to push. If it'll just do one thing, I can drive it. But if it starts doing both, I'm junk.
And I know one thing you do want. Every time that caution flag comes out, you want 4 tires.
I want 4 tires. What do you think about my trailing arms? Think I'll leave them up?
You got to have them down. You got to have them things down. Get that forward bite up off that corner. You got different locations for the trailing arms. The further down they are at the front, the better forward bite. Got to have them trailing arms down.
Yeah, probably with some blocks in it too to get that forward bite. You got to get up off these corners. You know that, Darrell. You can coast in, but if you can mat that bad boy about the middle of the drive and something got up off, you can go.
All right, so we got the springs and the shocks. We're going to argue about the sway bar after practice. We didn't get the shocks, so what do you think? You going to go with the aggressives, linears, or what kind of shock pack are we going to have today?
I believe I'm going to go with me some linears, get that thing down in that racetrack. Maybe some digressive linears, but I believe I'd lean toward linears.
I think I'm going with the linears because of the tire. It's the harder tire. I believe it'll like linear shocks.
What does our owner think?
I am so glad, folks, that we have 19 weeks left to explain all this to you. But this is the kind of conversation times 43 cars that is going on in that garage area right now.
Midway through practice, Hut Strickland has run the most laps, and Mike Wallace nearly gets into the wall off turn 2. John Andretti loses an oil pump belt and has to change engines. Both Evernham cars change engines too. Jeff Gordon puts up the fastest time over Rusty Wallace. Jimmy Spencer surprises with the third best speed ahead of Bobby Labonte and Steve Park. Kevin Harvick takes 9th. With that, all that's left to do is run the race.
Full of emotion and motion for all racing fans. Jeff Gordon has the pole position today in Rockingham, where rain could be a factor. Hi, I'm Chris Myers, coming to you from The Rock, trackside in our mobile studio here at the North Carolina Motor Speedway, and thanks for being with us. Dale Earnhardt once said if he died on the racetrack, he would be doing what he truly loved and that nobody should shed any tears. Well, there have been plenty of tears, but Dale would want us all to wipe those tears away and with strength and courage to continue racing.
In the words of writer Jim Leitka for the Bellingham Herald, Sunday morning begins under a sky just waiting to cry. It's cold, dark, and rainy. In the infield, a puddle forms around the flowers left in an open parking space, the spot reserved for Dale Earnhardt's motor coach. The flag by Victory Lane is at half-mast, an Earnhardt flag waving under the stars and stripes. Under the whir of idling jet dryers, fans file into the track. At the gate, each is handed a pennant to the Goodwrench Chevrolet. Drivers, crew members, and even the broadcasters are wearing the same souvenir caps with the iconic number 3. For the first time since 1979, Earnhardt's not in the drivers' meeting. More rain is on the way.
Drivers used to say the worst thing to see on the track was Dale Earnhardt in your rearview mirror. Now we all realize the worst thing is not to see Dale Earnhardt at all.
With the start of the race delayed, Fox's extended pre-race show begins with an interview with Mike Helton.
The first thing, Mike, is given the news of the broken seatbelt, are there any new developments regarding the loss of Dale Earnhardt?
Well, while the investigation continues, since our announcement Friday morning, there's nothing new to report that we're conclusive about. It's basically where we were at Friday morning with the fact that there's a piece of a belt that was supposed to be in one piece. It's now in 2 pieces.
A number of drivers now are using the 6-point belt system, improving safety. Hans' device has been stepped up, and I spoke with a number of drivers, including Jeff Burton, and he said that NASCAR and everyone in the sport has to do much more about driver safety. He said this following, of course, Earnhardt's tragic death.
This thing got in front of us somehow. I don't know how it happened. It's the teams, the drivers, it's NASCAR, it's all of us. We all need to step it up, and we all need to do a better job than what we've been doing. The fact that 4 people have been killed in a short period of time says there's something wrong.
Now, something wrong. Are drivers coming to you, Mike, as president of NASCAR and saying we need to do more?
Well, I think particularly this week, everybody wants to do more. NASCAR, the competitors in the garage area, the crew members, everybody wants to do as much as possible, even more than we do today. So I think the emotions and the frustrations of what's happened has driven everybody to want to do more right now.
Mike, don't you think that maybe it's time that NASCAR, all of us, mandate certain things? We know safety. There's a lot of safety equipment that's not being used. The Hans device is not mandatory. None of these safety items are mandatory for drivers' protection. Don't you think maybe it's time we said, okay, this is what you got to do?
Well, we mandate a lot of safety elements. But when it comes to that cocoon that Michael talked about Monday, that the driver sits in, because of the different shapes and sizes of drivers, there's some things that we simply need to recommend and work with the competitors to make better, as well as outside suppliers. In the meantime, if there's something else that makes universal sense, that fits everybody exactly, it's something we can take a look at. But that the ergonomics of that cocoon is so specialized to the shape and the size and the preference of the driver, it's a recommended situation.
With that said, consider this. We go through a very stringent technical inspection with the cars. I would suggest that maybe we put the driver in the car, hook him up, seat belts, helmet, gloves, just like he's going to go on the racetrack. Have a NASCAR inspector there, look at that cocoon, and also have 3 drivers there, or maybe 2 drivers and a crew chief, because everybody sees something different. Sometimes it's the blind obvious that gets us, and maybe that's a good procedure that we could initiate and start moving things forward.
Well, and in a sense we do that today, but like Jeff said earlier, Jeff Burton said earlier, it's all of us that have to step up to the plate, and the responsibility of safety is shared by everybody in NASCAR. If it became simply a part of the inspection process, we don't know what the driver does when he goes out and gets in the car at pit road. How much of that does he follow? We can enforce it in the inspection bay, but the driver has to help us with that, and that's where we've always shared the responsibility of the safety issue.
Mike, is anybody in NASCAR, is this something you're going to do personally, or is it a situation where have you got somebody already in place in NASCAR that's responsible for your safety deal now? Have you got like a little inner working group?
Yeah, we've got the best committee in all of motorsports, and that's the garage area first and foremost. There's not 2 or 3 personal individuals at NASCAR that all the safety issues land on. It's spread out. For some time now, NASCAR has been talking about, and we've started investing capital in buildings and land
and now putting staff up together to work 5 days a week on a broad range of issues, but safety's first and foremost to us. And this is something that's been in the works for 5 or 6 months now, and will be coming about as we speak. But it's a universal issue. It's not just one person at NASCAR making the calls.
And some of the drivers have suggested a year-round safety committee that involves drivers and someone from NASCAR and a manufacturer and an owner that just focuses on safety.
Yeah. Here again, I think we've got the best at our access in the garage area, and then from the automobile manufacturers and suppliers to help us with this. Now, if we've got to step up the communication process and the involvement process of a deeper group, then that's what we'll do.
The debate over mandating the Hans device also intensifies.
As we look at some of the drivers stepping in and trying on the Hans device.
This is Brett Bodine, and he's putting his on right now.
And Daryl, you asked Mike Helton, hey, maybe it's time now that we make something like this mandatory. What was his response? Was it sufficient for you?
Well, I think it's something you got to do. It shouldn't be an option. It shouldn't be, well, we're going to look at it. It shouldn't be maybe so. I think it's something you just got to do. These drivers are just like kids. They're just like the analogy I used about the motorcycle riders who won't ride with a helmet unless you make them, unless it's a law. It should be a law that you got to have some sort of head restraint device. Right. You can choose, but it's got to be a head restraint device.
Well, for another side of the story, Ricky Rudd, what do you think? Should there be more safety devices mandated? Should you be required to wear things like the Hans device?
Well, Dick, I think anything that can improve driver safety ought to definitely be looked at. Should it be mandated? I think when there's positive proof and there's tests that show that the Hans device truly works in a Winston Cup environment, and we know it works, there's no guesswork to it, then yeah, I think they ought to be mandated. But on the same token, you know, we've never really seen these devices in Winston Cup cars go through any kind of terrible crashes. But again, I think anything is better than not having anything at all, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing varying versions of the Hans device, and me personally, I would wear one if I could get comfortable in it. And be honest with you, I haven't spent enough time working on it, getting it some type of a customized form of a Hans device. I like the theory behind it. I think it seems like me it would have to work. I don't want to be the guy that goes out and tests it. I think that's up to the crash dummies to do all that. But if it works and it's proved that it works in a Winston Cup car, and different from a Formula car or Indy car, you know, we sit up driving our cars. We don't lay down in a seat. I put one on one time. That's not much of a chance. But when I put it on, the problem I had with it, and I didn't really have anybody show me there how to wear it, but it was, to me, it limited my side-to-side vision. I couldn't turn my head very far. Again, a lot of these guys that are wearing ones today have taken that stock version and modified it to work for them. And quite frankly, I should be responsible for that, and I need to sit down. As a matter of fact, we've got 2 of them sitting in the shop that I'm going to work on Monday. That's not doing us any good this weekend.
How would you feel if they required some of this stuff, if they take the choice away from you?
Well, I don't think it's a bad way to go. If it makes, you know, if it's mandatory and everybody has to use it, then we just all have to use it. You don't want to end up causing more problems. All of a sudden you have a rash of accidents because a driver cut another driver off because he couldn't turn his head to see that there was another car there. You know, that's the only thing about mandating it and just kind of like forcing it down everybody's throats. But again, if it's proven that it's better and it can save some lives, then I'm all for mandating it.
I want to respond to Ricky Rudd, and I'm certainly not arguing with Ricky Rudd by any means, but again, if you hear what he says, yeah, if it was mandatory and everybody had to wear it, then sure, I'd wear one, but I don't want to be the only guy out there with one, and I really haven't tried it yet. And it restrains, sure, it's going to affect your driving and the way you've driven or sat in the car before. But we can put mirrors. I had mirrors in my car. I had a big long mirror across the top. I had a little side mirror. Put mirrors. If it's going to keep you from moving around, put mirrors. I look in these cars now, they got headrests that go all the way past the driver's head, and there's no way he can see side to side anyway. So there's a lot of things we can do. First thing we got to do, though, is something. We can't just keep saying, well, I don't know, maybe we ought to do. We got to do something.
After Ken Barlow expressed concerns that the current car was too rigid, Larry McReynolds brings his own experience to the subject.
Daryl, to you and Jeff, there's one thing that we've talked about what the drivers need to do, what we need to do, as Mike Kelton referred to, the cocoon, where the driver sits. But something I've thought about all week is something that has evolved over the last 15 or even 20 years. We have learned as crew chiefs, nothing to do with NASCAR, that the stiffer we can make the race cars, the more responsive they are to changes. In other words, the more rigid we can make it. And when you look at a car from 15 years ago to a car in the garage today, there's more braces, there's more gussets. We've got braces on the braces. And what's happened now, with more stands around the racetrack, we've had to get away from guardrails. We've had to go to concrete walls. So you've got a concrete wall that will not move. You've got a stiff race car. The stiff race car hits the wall. It's like a brick hitting a brick. What's the weak link? The human body sitting in the seat. So I think, you know, it's a combination. We can talk about Hans devices and neck supports and neck restraints, but I think when I say we, that's NASCAR, race teams, everybody, the engineers, we've got to look at some other things that we can do to soften that blow. There's no crush. There's no crush when the race car hits the wall.
Frank Stoddard goes over the safety improvements made to Jeff Burton's car over the past year.
Well, guys, really this is driver-driven. Jeff's been in the shop all winter long. After what happened last year with the unfortunate fatalities of Kenny Irwin and Adam Petty and Tony Roper, he was looking to try to make the compartment a little bit safer. So he's come up with a headrest that you can see here. It actually extends almost to the steering wheel area. It doesn't allow the driver's head, we don't believe, to get past the headrest. In wrecks in the past, the headrest has been only probably 6 or 8 inches long. It will fold over. The driver's head might get beyond the other side of it and cause problems. With this thing here, we've actually tied it into the shoulder brace to where it's real strong. And the unique thing is we went ahead and put a hole in it, so now he can still see out the mirror, see out the right side of the car. He really doesn't even realize it's there. This is just a great thing that I think that Jeff Burton has worked hard on this winter. The guys in the shop, Brian Butler, a bunch of people put a lot of time and effort into this, and it's a wave of the future, I hope.
Frankie, the net there on the outer window opening, Jeff Burton was one of the first ones to run that. Why don't you explain that one? Because that's like a secondary net.
That's right, Larry. This net here actually just ties in real close to the driver's head. The net out here at the window, you know, that just kind of seals everything off to where if it's a flipping wreck, Daytona or something, the arms and things like that stay in the car. This wreck here, this was more after, we really did this after John Nemechek had a fatality at Homestead. Unfortunately, his head actually came out and was real close to the wall, the concrete wall. So this net here we made up to tie the thing in to where if the driver's head came out, this net held it before it ever got to the outside net.
Frank, this is Jeff. Jeff Burton is a very passionate individual when it comes to his driver's area. Not only his, but I think every other driver from what I can see right there. I know when I was working with Roush that he was always coming around looking at the different cars of the other teammates and trying to help them make sure their stuff was as safe as possible, because he's very passionate about that, isn't he?
Well, he certainly is, Jeff. And, you know, I think that we need somebody like him in this sport to be able to have a panel maybe that's established from here and down the road to look at every individual's car and come back and tell all of us what the best things that they saw were. If we could have some sort of a panel that went back and at the end of the day, when Larry was a crew chief last year and when you were a crew chief, if they could have come to you and said, guys, these are the best ways we can see to mount a seat, the best ways to mount seat belts, the best headrest that we see in all the 43 competitors' cars. This is what we see as the best. I think at the end of the day, then it's each driver's opportunity to go put into the car what he thinks is the best for him. It's not going to be about somebody telling him what he has to do, but I think giving him the avenues of what it looks like are the best things to have. And then at the end of the day, Jeff Burton can make the ultimate decision on what he thinks is the safest in his race car. But having the information from the other 43 competitors will be a big help and a big step towards the future.
Frank, is he using the Hans device?
No, we've been working on that real diligently. We went and tested it at Kentucky. Actually, we've had a couple different seat variations in the car. But we just really haven't been able to get it real comfortable for him in the car. But a lot of people right now are putting a lot of time and effort into the Hans device in different avenues of the Hans device to make it a little bit less bulky. And I think down the road, we certainly want to have something like that in our car.
Safety isn't the only controversy being addressed. Mike Joy explains to casual viewers why the show must go on.
This week, amidst cries from people who don't understand this sport or the people in it, to not hold this race, to not bring these cars, to not challenge these drivers. We are all here, and we are set to go racing. Because, if for nothing else, Larry McReynolds, if Dale were here and thought we weren't going racing, he'd kick our butt.
He really would.
He also addresses complaints about how the end of the Daytona broadcast was handled.
Carroll adequately conveyed what we felt in the booth from seeing the incident, from seeing Ken Schrader's reaction. But to those of you and to some second-guessing folks who thought that last Sunday we didn't convey a sufficient sense of gravity, in an active crash scene, our reporters are barred from the scene. Our cameras were shielded. We had to rely on the officials in NASCAR for information, and at every turn we were stonewalled. I think we did what we could to convey that we knew this was serious, but in absence of any further information, we told you all we could, and we told you all we knew. And we were just as saddened as shocked to learn of the ultimate outcome, but there was not much more we could have done with the information that we were allowed to have.
And he speaks to those assigning blame for Earnhardt's death.
Welcome back to Rockingham. Mike Joy with Larry McReynolds. In the wake of any tragedy, some people just seem like they have to fix blame. Bill Simpson, the seatbelt maker, has received death threats unfairly, as was pointed out in our pre-race show. Did Rusty Wallace taking the air off Earnhardt's spoiler contribute? Did the angle of the collision with Kenny Schrader? Everyone has theories. Everyone is looking for a place to point the finger of blame. And this week, so much of that focus, again unfairly, has been pointed at Sterling Marlin.
On that same subject, there are two segments on Sterling Marlin, who recalls the last lap vividly.
Get on down the back straightaway and get in the three and start turning in. And I knew it was real tight. And I said, well, Dale sees me. And as we started in, his car just barely started coming down, and we barely touched. And I got out of the gas, and he straightened it up, and I'm back on the gas, and all of a sudden his car really comes more. It's like it got loose or something. It comes down and barely clips my right front, and it turns me down on the apron, and we're both like this. And I'm trying to straighten my car. The next thing I seen was the flash of black go back across the track up the hill.
So Sunday night and Monday had to have been pretty lonely for Sterling Marlin.
I just want to take Monday off. Just, you know, it was a bad loss for racing, and we lost a friend and didn't want to talk about it. But, you know, what the aggravating thing was, you get home and you hear your local news guy saying on TV that, you know, I'd hit Dale Earnhardt. You know, I said, what movie was you watching?
Were you surprised when that started happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked. I said, man, what's going on? I said, and I called NASCAR, called, you know, Mike and them, and said, man, did I do anything wrong? No, you ain't done nothing wrong. And that's what surprised me. But, you know, at the point in time, I guess, you know, some of the Dale's fans have really been fans for years and got to point at somebody.
I'm sure it must have made you feel a lot better when all the drivers, and Dale Jr. particularly, came to your aid and supported you and stood.
You know, here we are, starting side by side.
I know you started 25th and 26th.
I'm 26, so I just hope Dale Jr. can carry the legacy on, and you know, he's got a golden future in NASCAR.
Jr. declines to be interviewed as he talks with Marlin, then joins his teammates at DEI. In all, 14 of the 43 starters speak to Fox during the delay, each visibly exhausted.
What are your emotions at this moment, Steve?
Man, I've never done so little and have been so emotionally tired, I think, in my life. It's just been probably one of the longest weeks of my life. And, you know, our thoughts and prayers are with the whole Earnhardt family and Dale Jr. and, you know, myself and Michael. It just, you know, we're here to represent not only Dale Earnhardt, but the whole company and Teresa. And just want to thank all the race fans for all their support and all the media. They've done a great job helping us have our space and try to heal from this. But physically, I'm in great shape, but emotionally, I'm tired.
Feel better at the racetrack, you know, because all your friends and stuff here. I mean, we are one big family, and it seemed like we left Daytona a month ago. It just was a long week.
How do you feel as we are about to start this race?
I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Someone asked me what the biggest difference is, and I said, well, usually one time, just out of meanness, he'd wiggle you here and, you know, make you see how good a job you could do of saving it. But it'll be different without Dale here. But, you know, we need to be here. That's what we need to be doing.
How much pressure was on this team coming in without any car owner points?
Not near as much as there was right after I wrecked our car. That wasn't good. I've never had it loaded up quite so heavily on my shoulders in forever to go out and qualify. And in the qualifying lap, the car didn't stick to anything much. The track had gotten slipperier and kind of reminded me what it used to be like to qualify. And I had to bounce it off of a couple of walls, but came back and got 7th. And so the race will be a lot calmer than that for me as far as the way I'm going to go about things. Just hopefully we can get a setup under our car before the end of the day that'll allow us to race with them again this week. The Daytona 500 was really cool, and I was really confident about that. And so we need to continue that.
Well, Dale Earnhardt was rumored to have been able to see the air, but what I think we really saw was potential, and that paid off last week with Michael Waltrip.
And, I'm going to try to get up and use a line today that Dale Earnhardt taught me, up against the wall, and see if that works. I think that's going to be good with this tire that we have, the setup that we have. That worked for us here last time, and that's where Dale always used to go first.
And I noticed as well you will have one of the stickers on your car as well, one of the decals, everyone thinking about him today.
Yeah, I don't think there's a person here that he hasn't influenced their lives in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's the fans up here, that the ones that liked him or didn't pull for him, they appreciated still what Dale Earnhardt was, what he did, and everybody in this garage area has him to be thankful for having the facilities that we have, the opportunities that we have, the money we race for, the money that the mechanics make. Dale Earnhardt's a big part of that, so we all have that to be thankful for. And, we know he's up watching us, and, we know he's in a better place. But, we've been asked a lot, I guess, do you want to be here this weekend? Yeah, I want to be here. I want to race. This is what we do, and this is what Dale did. But I sure want Dale Earnhardt to be here with us. We know that can't be, so we know he wants to be racing, and we're certainly thinking about Teresa and the entire family, Richard Childress and everyone there. Dale Jr., what a tough week it's been on everyone, but, I think they've handled it remarkably well, and thanks to the fans. Again, regardless of who they pull for, we know that Dale Earnhardt brought millions of fans to this sport. Now Dale's left it in our hands to keep them entertained, and we're going to try to do that.
We also hear from Richard Childress.
We're all saddened today, and we just been praying for the Earnhardt family, and give us all strength. Dale would want us to be strong. He'd be kicking my butt if he knew we were weak now, and it's just so many people that he's touched their lives, and I pray for them. And he was a special person, special friend. We're going to miss him. We got a job to do today. Nobody wants to be here, but we're doing it for Dale today. And Kevin Harvick has stepped up to the plate. He's a great young driver, and we got a lot of confidence in him. Dale had a lot of confidence in him. He kidded around how he was going to hire him, and so I know Dale would be happy with what we've done with putting Kevin in the car. There'll never be, like Kevin said the other day, there'll never be another Dale Earnhardt, and he just wants to be another RCR driver.
Thank you for your grace, Richard.
Thank you.
And his new driver, Kevin Harvick.
Kevin Hamlin told me this morning that Dale Earnhardt thought an awful lot about you as a person and your ability. How do you feel as we get ready to start this race?
I feel like we have a chance to win the race. We had an awesome car yesterday in happy hour, and it's a tough situation, but it's only as tough as you make it. And I think the 190 people at RCR and the fans and everybody surrounding it has not turned it into a positive, but made it a lot easier on me and made me feel comfortable where I can go out and drive the race car and do what I have to do. And I think I said this in a press conference the other day. If Dale Earnhardt had a broken leg and he couldn't race this weekend, he'd want me to drive the hell out of his race car, and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, tell us how it was in practice. Are you ready for this race?
Yeah, the race car was good. We only ran the first 45 minutes, and we felt we were as good, if not better, than most of the cars. And today's a different day, and you never know what's going to happen. But as of yesterday, when I was in my motorhome listening to the rest of them practice, we were fine. So, it's just one of those deals where you don't know what the racetrack's going to be like, and I know how the race car is going to drive, but the weather's not the same, so I really don't. But we'll just go out there and do the best we can, and I think we got one of the best race teams behind us that there is in the business, and I know I've got the best owner in the business, so we're well surrounded, and we'll be fine.
Good luck to you, Kevin. Let's go to Matt Yoakum.
In between are multiple pre-recorded interviews honoring Dale.
Dale Earnhardt was synonymous with NASCAR racing. There are so many
race car drivers, young drivers that chose to go NASCAR racing because they wanted to be like Dale Earnhardt and they wanted to emulate what he had done. And I don't have to remind the world how great a loss it is. Every one of us feel it the same way.
He was a really good friend, and if I could talk to him right now, I'd look him right in the eye and say, boy, when I get to heaven, you and I are going to have a couple words, because you sure did make a lot of us cry while you were gone.
Dale was irreplaceable to GM, to its employees, to its dealers, and to its fans.
We'll miss his friendship. We'll miss his fierce determination to win, whether on the track or as a Chevrolet dealer. But we'll always remember his many contributions to Chevrolet and to General Motors.
He was one of those guys that you never knew what to expect from him, that's for sure, on or off the racetrack, but definitely somebody that I admired, looked up to, and respected greatly.
I think the first time I really remember him was running Martinsville, and I started up 6th or 8th or somewhere, and he started about 15th, and they threw the green flag and went in the first corner, and here he is up on my hood. He done pulled out, passed about 10 cars, come across the grass with all 4 wheels, jumped the curb, landed right on my hood, and that was the first real experience I had with Dale Earnhardt.
It's going to be a loss for all of us like Elvis Presley probably was to the music industry, and maybe even greater.
He only wanted to be the best. He only wanted to win, and he did whatever he could to win. And I think that's where he was such a great inspiration, that every aspiring young driver in the country that wants to be a stock car driver, they would look at Dale Earnhardt and say, if I could just be a little bit like him, I'll make it in this business and can be good.
After more than an hour's delay, drivers are called to their cars. As the covers come off, a crowd gathers around Michael Waltrip's car on pit road. Others stand on pit wall, each carrying an Earnhardt pennant. By then, Darrell Waltrip and his wife Stevie address the crowd. At Michigan on August 18, 1991, Darrell gave a eulogy to J.D. McDuffie, who died a week before in a crash at Watkins Glen. Now, nearly a decade later, he will do the same honor for Dale Earnhardt.
I'd like to ask you to do something. I'd like to ask you to take the hand by the person beside you, and let's all bond together, and let's all take a few moments to remember Dale and what a great driver he was and all the great memories that he leaves behind. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, our hearts are hurting. We've lost a great friend, and it all seems so unfair. Lord, we know you have a plan for every one of us, and it's easy for us to deal with the triumphs, but today we have to deal with the tragedy. So, Father, we ask you to give us strength as we deal with this loss. We pray for Teresa, Dale Jr., the entire Earnhardt family. Comfort them, Lord. People ask us, how can we go out and race today? We can do that, first of all, because we know that's what Dale would want us to do. And second of all, because we know he's in heaven with you. He's in a place, Lord, that we all long to be someday. So let us turn our hearts from sadness and let's celebrate the life of Dale Earnhardt and the great memories that we all have of him. Because, Lord, we know without a doubt that he is dwelling in your house and will forevermore. Amen.
After introducing the starting grid, pole sitter Jeff Gordon slows the inside line.
You see at the front of the field, pole sitter Jeff Gordon has backed off one row, leaving the pole position open in honor of Dale Earnhardt.
This caution also runs long, during which time Gordon keeps the pole position open for more than 5 minutes. Still another tribute will follow, though under less than ideal circumstances.
Green flag, we're racing. car dropped right in single file, but Tony Stewart challenged Ricky Rudd and moves up to third.
Oh, we got trouble already.
3 cars, 4 cars.
It's Dale Jr.
Earnhardt Jr. with Jimmy Spencer, Kenny Wallace, and Mike Wallace. And it is Earnhardt Jr.'s car who comes to rest against the outside wall at turn 4.
This cannot be happening to that young man.
Kenny Wallace goes to the garage, Mike Wallace to pit road.
The first silent lap 3 takes place under caution as Dale Earnhardt Jr. climbs from his wrecked Chevrolet. His only injuries are contusions on his lower waist and thighs, both caused by his lap belts being too tight. Jimmy Spencer pits for repairs to his fender, while brothers Kenny and Mike Wallace go behind the wall along with Jr. While it was Ron Hornaday who bumped Jr. going into turn 3, it is Robbie Gordon who for a second straight week is blamed for a wreck.
First off, are you okay, Dale?
Yeah, I'm fine. Everybody home, I'm doing all right, no big deal. Just tight. Go racing, getting down into 3. The 4 car pulled down in front of me, and everybody checked up, and I was checking up, and somebody didn't. So it's tough. You know, we really had a good car, wanted to do good here, get the year started off right, but had to go to the garage, see if we can get it back out there.
The DEI crew looks over Junior's car, only to discover how badly the suspension is bent. As rain begins to fall again, prolonging the caution, they push the car to the hauler and load up, done for the day. The added rain delay allows Mike Wallace to return to the track just 17 laps down, a new radiator strapped down with bungee cords. Further up the field, Ricky Rudd believes he has an electrical issue on his cooling system. It's blowing air, but not cold air. He'll ultimately shut off the system altogether. Still under caution on lap 29, Rudd stays out, while 7 other drivers pit for fuel and tires, including Kevin Harvick, Mike Skinner, and Stacy Compton. The race is finally about to restart, this time on lap 31. During this run, the fastest cars belong to Ward Burton, who climbs to 8th, and Ricky Craven, who's up to 23rd from 41st on the grid. Up front, Steve Park catches Jeff Gordon for the lead.
The interesting thing about Rusty Wallace's setup is that they came here with the setup they ordinarily run, and they thought they were going to be able to get away with it with this tire. Didn't work well, so they changed about everything they could think of, and that didn't work either. So then they went back to the setup they came with. Guess what? The car was fine, and they don't really know why. The lead just changed.
Steve Park puts the nose of his Chevrolet in the win.
Seconds later, on lap 46, rain falls again. Under caution, most of the leaders pit. Jeff Gordon holds off Steve Park, but Stacy Compton stays out to lead. Rick Mast's crew looks under the hood at a smoking engine, an inauspicious start to the Midwest Transit team's new engine deal with Pro Motors. They send him back out. Ward Burton's fast Dodge comes in a second time. The jack was dropped a moment too soon, leaving him with loose lug nuts on his left front wheel. Ken Schrader also makes another stop for tape on the grill. On lap 51, both follow the rest of the field down pit road to stop. The rain is intensified. The caution can't come soon enough for Tony Stewart. Determined to stay in his car, having only climbed out early twice in his entire career, he's already exhausted. Fortunately for him, he'll have another night to rest up. The race has been postponed to 11 a.m. the following day.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it matches the mood. I mean, maybe we shouldn't even started racing today, but I feel bad for my whole team, but then I look around, I start to feel sorry for myself. And you look at Little Lee, I feel double bad for that guy. I mean, it was just an unfortunate deal. We're just not even getting to lap 1, and I don't know what the deal was. Everybody was wanting to get to the bottom really bad, and the 4 car got down in front of Little Lee. Little Lee jacked him in the rear a little bit. He got sideways, and then Hornaday got into him, and here come Little Lee just flying out, and he looked like he was head on the wall, and then I was there, so I don't know. It's pouring down rain. It matches the whole deal right now, and it's raining all over you.
Yeah, we're getting pretty wet. I'll let you go inside.
Okay, thanks.
For the first time since another Rockingham race in 1983, a race started on Sunday will be completed the following day. So rare is the occasion that NASCAR has to distribute a list of rules as to what 15 things teams could do and 9 things they could not during the one-night delay. Among the things they couldn't do were jack up the car for any reason, get inside the car, add fuel, oil, or brake fluid, or repair damage. The reason is there will not be another round of inspection before the race is restarted. To say the least, it's been a depressing day at the end of an awful week. Most curiously, it's at the very end of Sunday's broadcast that Fox gives one of their viewing platforms a name.
You know what his nickname is? You know what we always called him?
Before or after today?
Well, now and even before. Hollywood Hammond. And he's down there in his little house on the prairie now.
Hey, I want you to know right now, I am nice and warm and dry in here, guys.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this.
I've got my popcorn.
Look at Barbie's Fantasy single wide right here.
It's a bungalow in there.
It's a little house on the prairie, and there he is sitting right there.
So for Jeff Hammond and Chris Myers down there in the Hollywood Hotel above Victory Lane, a soggy Dick Berggren, Matt Yoakum, Steve Burns, and Jeannie Zelasco, Mike Joy for Darrell Waltrip, and for Larry McReynolds, whose weather forecast today proved all too accurate as we are rained out at the Rock. 51 laps are complete. They are laps of record, and we will continue tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. on FX.
In his Sunday write-up article for the Chicago Tribune, Ed Hinton takes issue with the atmosphere at Rockingham, believing too many fans were taking Earnhardt's death in stride. He draws comparisons with Monaco in 1994, following the death of Ayrton Senna. There, all race day long, lay a pall of ineffable enormity. 60,000 zombies walked blank-faced along the hilly streets of the richest little country in the world, and a single, elegant, black-draped sign in the pits read simply, Senna, adieu. Once again, Chris Economaki offers perspective. This is not a cruel sport, he says. You want to know about a cruel sport? September 1934, Orange County Fairgrounds. Middletown, New York's Bill Walters, in his early 20s, was killed in a crash on the backstretch. The ambulance driver arrived at the scene and wouldn't take him. Said, "What can I do with him? He's dead." The AAA official told Bill Walters' father, "He's yours." And so that night, the father drove the 45 miles home to Maplewood, New Jersey, with a wrecked race car on a trailer and the body of his dead son in the trunk of the tow car. That was a cruel sport. That night, one more memorial service is held, this time in Dale Earnhardt's hometown of Kannapolis. Fans fill the stadium for baseball's Kannapolis Intimidators, the single-A affiliate to the Chicago White Sox.
This is a very personal service. Why is it that this one seems to be a little bit different than the others that we've seen earlier this week?
I think because this one is for the people he grew up with, his hometown. There are two things Kannapolis, North Carolina is known for. One is the Fieldcrest Cannon textile mill, the towels and sheets in your closet, and the other, and probably more famous for, is Dale Earnhardt. He's the local boy done good in a big way. And I've been hearing nothing but stories from people. I went to elementary school with Dale. He and I used to play pool together all night long. So these are his childhood friends and neighbors come to celebrate his life.
He died 1 week ago today. He was laid to rest earlier this week. Tributes all throughout the week. But you know what? People that we're talking to who have come from so far away say they wanted to come to this one because this one is special, because this one seems to be representative of who he was, just an ordinary guy.
Dale Earnhardt touched a lot of people's lives, and it's been one of the interesting things about this whole week to me is how many people, average, ordinary citizens, really attach themselves to this man and trying to figure out why, what it was that made him special. I think it's because he was one of them. He, despite the millions that he made and the fame that he got, was just a regular old guy who wore blue jeans and cowboy boots every day. That was his natural dress. And these are the people that identify with him so strongly. These are the blue-collar people that are Dale's army, if you will. Arnie had his army in golf. This is Dale's army, all these people here tonight. And the other side of that, too, realistically, this was the one that they could participate in. The services earlier in the week were for invitation only. This one is open to everyone, and they've turned out.
I'm Ray Moss, and I'm the mayor of the city of Kannapolis. I'd like to welcome each one of you tonight and thank you for coming. We have family members, the Earnhardt family is in place here in front of us. We thank you for being here, especially for Martha Earnhardt and her children. We want to thank the race fans who are here, the NASCAR personnel, those persons who have been so close and such a part of Dale Earnhardt's life. I said to someone earlier today, maybe several times today, that Dale Earnhardt learned to drive on the streets of Kannapolis long before he ever put an automobile on the speedway. We're proud of Dale Earnhardt. We're proud of the Earnhardt family. And this is a service of remembrance, a service that's dedicated to the glory of God and to the memory of Dale Earnhardt.
Among those who speak are Carrie Earnhardt, along with Dale's sisters Kathy Watkins and Kay Snipes.
Dale always started each race with a scripture which Stevie Waltrip gave to him. So we felt it appropriate to have a scripture today. It comes from 2 Timothy, 4th chapter, 6 through 8. The time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day. And not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing. Dale has finished the race, but more importantly, he kept the faith and has received the trophy from the righteous judge, Jesus Christ. But now we must run our race and make sure that we keep the faith.
I'm Kathy Watkins, Dale's next sister. And he would just be real aggravated if we let our weak emotions get the best of us tonight. Kannapolis celebrated life with Dale Earnhardt on Dale Earnhardt Day. We were all there together, family, friends, fans, and we were smiling and having so much fun. Well, tonight, we celebrate Dale Earnhardt's life without him. We're all here together, family, friends, with tears in our eyes, but we need to wipe those tears away and put smiles on our faces and know that Dale would want us that way. Danny, Sherry, and Danny Earnhardt Jr., thank you for all the calls, all the flowers, all the food, all the prayers. A special thank you to the Kannapolis Police Department as they have stood vigil by my mother through this whole affair, trying to help manage the flow of respects and love from people that is just a little bit overwhelming. We appreciate your understanding for anyone that did not get to her door or did not get to speak to a family member. We love you all, and I hope you will share that with us another day.
Hi, I'm Kerry Earnhardt, Dale's oldest son. I'm sorry Kelly and Dale Jr. couldn't make it tonight, but on our behalf, I'd like to thank everyone, family and friends out there called fans, for their support and for their concerns and prayers. And, keep up the support and concern and the loyalty to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and NASCAR. And we still need you. Thank y'all.
And tonight, while you may be honoring me as your 7-time champion, I'm here to say it's me, Dale Earnhardt, who honors you and thanks you.
We will always remember Dale Earnhardt as a champion in every facet of life. His passing has brought much sorrow, but his life brought millions great joy. Godspeed, Dale Earnhardt.
Flags at half-mast here at Rockingham, honoring Dale Earnhardt. We just weren't meant to race yesterday. 39 of those 51 laps yesterday were run under caution.
After the rain passes through late Sunday afternoon, Monday's resumption of the Dura Lube 400 comes under crystal blue skies. Under caution, a few cars come down pit road, including Mike Wallace for more substantial repairs to the nose of his Ford. Having pitted on Sunday, Stacy Compton stays out, and on lap 56 chooses to take the green flag on old tires.
Start really no cars a lap down other than Mike Wallace, and the disadvantage of that this early in the race, the leader takes the green flag, which may be why Stacy Compton did what he did. The last car's in turn 3, so you're almost a half a lap down.
Green flag on a sunny Monday morning. We're back racing at the Rock. And Gordon goes for it right away.
That's the difference in stopping and getting 4 fresh tires than having some that you've ridden around a few laps on.
This place is so hard on tires. Any laps at all, you almost got to come on the pit road if the caution comes out. We're going to see pit stops. Pit crewmen are going to be very busy people today.
While most of the field fights a tight condition, Steve Park runs down Gordon once again and completes the pass on lap 74. 10 laps later, Compton is just about to be lapped when he pits for tires. Matt Kenseth overheats as a garbage bag-sized patch of tape from Mike Wallace's car blocks his radiator. It's a second straight race that overheating has sabotaged his run. As the run continues, Jeff Gordon starts to reel in Park, but other drivers are starting to impress. On lap 89, Ricky Craven passes Dale Jarrett, with Robert Presley working his way from the back of the field to 19th. Michael Waltrip is using the high lane to great effect, and on lap 100 races past Tony Stewart for third. Stewart's fighting a loose condition as the team undoes their adjustments from Sunday's cold weather. Waltrip begins to pressure Park for second, just as his teammate makes another bid for the lead. Moments later, Jeff Burton bounces off the wall in turn 4, forcing an unscheduled stop. It's a terrible break, as Burton believed he was able to match Waltrip's pace. The number 15 now passed Park into second behind Gordon. On lap 117, with green flag stops approaching, Kevin Harvick has already picked up 17 spots since the restart, climbing from 33rd to 16th. After racing Bobby Labonte for third, Steve Park pits with Craven. Only Park is calling for chassis adjustments. Ward Burton and Sterling Marlin pit together. When Jeff Gordon comes in, Ron Hornaday nearly forces him into pit wall. Still under green, there's more trouble for Roush Racing. Kurt Busch ran into the back of Michael Waltrip on Sunday, and like Jeff Burton, has now bounced off the outside wall. Mark Martin, however, has run a clean race so far, but he's about to lose a lap. It's lap 154, and Park is still leading with Gordon hot on his heels. Ricky Craven is up to fourth. But Michael Waltrip's not happy with his new set of tires and drops back as he tries to find his rhythm from earlier. One driver who is happy during this run is Bobby Labonte, who on lap 168 passes Park for second. The next time by, Kenny Wallace finally returns to the race, 168 laps down in 42nd. He's been in the garage area since he wrecked with Dale Jr. on Sunday's first lap. Kenny will log 118 laps on Monday, but won't gain a single position. Jeff Burton makes another unscheduled stop, and this time shuts off his engine as the crew adjusts the toe end. Bobby Labonte catches Jeff Gordon for the lead, with Craven still holding fourth. Just 2 days after teammate Andy Houston failed to qualify, Craven is giving PPI Motorsports their best race ever. At the time, Cal Wells' NASCAR program is just a single top 10, a 10th by Scott Pruitt the previous year at Indianapolis. A second round of green flag stops begins on lap 189 as Casey Atwood pits, followed by Jason Leffler and Rusty Wallace. Wallace fights a loose condition, is about to lose a lap to the leaders. Past the halfway point on lap 205, Gordon pits with Park and Craven, but Bobby Labonte stays out another 4 laps with Sterling Marlin. On lap 224, Johnny Benson Jr. is running fourth with a good long-run car. He's looking forward to snowmobiling with Ken Schrader in Wyoming later in the week. 2 spots behind him is a surprising Dave Blaney, who's rebounded from his engine failure in Daytona to run 6th. It's not until lap 243, 150 laps remaining, and 188 laps after the race restarted, that the caution flies once more, and it's only a single-car spin for Mike Skinner. Skinner breaks loose in the high lane off turn 2, and Jeff Burton, hopelessly behind after his 2 unscheduled stops, makes slight contact with the stopped car. Jeff Gordon keeps the lead off pit road, and Mark Martin stays out to lead before pitting. The race restarts on lap 250 with Gordon still leading Park, the pair still the class of the field. John Andretti brushes the wall in turn 1. Teammates Ward Burton and Dave Blaney fight their way through traffic. Then, on lap 257, Ricky Rudd slows off turn 4, causing the field to scatter. Rudd says he's lost third gear, but as he coasts onto pit road, the damage is much worse. The rear gear has locked up solid. He'll return to the race in the final 100 laps and finish a disappointing 39th. With 132 to go, the best race on the track is the battle for 8th place, including Craven, Blaney, and Marlin. Over the next 7 laps, both Ward Burton and Robert Presley join the battle. With 123 to go, there's more trouble. Jeremy Mayfield comes down pit road off the pace. But another potential rear-end failure turns out to be a left side axle with the teeth worn to nothing. Worse, Mayfield's backup axle doesn't fit, so the crew has to run to the hauler for a replacement. Mayfield was another driver who managed to have a decent run at the end of the Daytona 500, though contact from Ricky Rudd just before Earnhardt's accident nearly spun him out. Around this time, Mark Martin makes an unscheduled stop for 4 tires. He thinks it's a loose wheel, but then concludes it was a loose wheel weight instead. 109 to go. Park leads Jeff Gordon by 3 seconds as the 24 picks up a push. Further back, Elliott Sadler has climbed to 12th, joining the half-dozen cars still battling for position in front. Kevin Harvick's not far behind in 14th. He's run as high as 13th. Ward Burton scrapes the wall in turns 1 and 2. Then, with 93 laps to go, Stacey Compton's engine lets go directly in front of race leader Park. No one else is involved, and Park beats Jeff Gordon off pit road. But when the race restarts with 85 to go, Gordon is ready.
Green flag, and Gordon goes right after the lead.
Gordon got a great jump on Steve Park, and it really is paying off. He was able to get by and going into 1.
Now there's racing everywhere. Robert Presley and Elliott Sadler race hard for 10th, with Blaney catching them both. Craven and Marlin are locked in a battle for 8th as they reel in a resurgent Rusty Wallace. With 66 to go, Sadler picks up a skip in the engine caused by a faulty alternator. In the last 66 laps, he slips from what would have been a career-tying 7th to 11th. Up front, it takes less than 30 laps for Park to catch and pass Jeff Gordon for the lead. Back out front, Park is just 54 laps away from his 2nd career victory, and well on his way to setting a new personal best for most laps led, 130 at Richmond the previous fall. But with around 40 to go, Park's lead starts to evaporate in heavy traffic. With 20 to go, a new contender arrives, as Bobby Labonte has caught Jeff Gordon for 2nd. When they too catch lap traffic, Labonte makes his move.
Slow car, traffic. Down low, up high, in the middle, here we come.
Now Gordon's Hendrick teammate, there Jerry Nadeau, backed out and left a hole there for Gordon to slide up into.
Labonte has been really good off this corner. They got him. He's got him.
Joe Gibbs, Labonte's car owner, on the headset. Bobby Labonte makes the pass and takes over 2nd place.
The pass comes with 15 laps to go. Park is over 2 seconds ahead, but by 10 to go, the interval is down to 1.6. 1 year earlier, it was Dale Earnhardt who tried to track down Bobby Labonte for the win, only to come up short. Now it's Labonte who's the hunter, and with 8 to go as Harvick lets Park by, the margin's about to drop to just 1 second. 5 to go, and Labonte is there. The Pontiac gets through the corners better, but Park's a little faster on the straightaway. 3 to go, Labonte makes his move.
A little harder.
Parks and Labonte's spotters are side by side.
He's there, but here he goes,
and
up
here
on the outside.
Labonte. Park went low to block. Labonte's going to try the high side.
He's going to get a whale of a run off the corner. Now he's got to figure out, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Which way am I going to go? I'm going to go
down,
under,
and Park slips up. Labonte on the bottom. Here he comes. It's going to be 2 laps to go.
Now the hard part for Bobby is to get off the corner with Park to his outside. He needs the whole racetrack to be able to make the pass.
Opposite from 3 and 4. Labonte goes to the high side. Park to the bottom side.
Park's not going to get. He's not going to give him. He's not going to give him room off that corner. Although he's pulled down a little bit. Here we go.
He runs him all the way up to the wall in turn 3 and 4. They'll be coming for the white flag.
Here we go.
Labonte gets loose.
1 lap to go. This is it.
Park wiggled and got into Labonte. He's going to make a run on the outside right here. Come on, buddy.
Steve Park trying for his 2nd Winston Cup win.
Got to run. He's got to run down the inside. Park blocks him a little bit.
Couldn't block it.
All right, Bobby's off early. He's going to gas it hard, and here they're going to come to the line. It's going to be a photo finish.
Park has the run off the high side. He clears Labonte, and Steve Park scores the 2nd straight win for Earnhardt Incorporated and the 2nd win of his career.
Man, what a great finish. It's just so hard. Catching him was one thing. Passing him, as we always say, that's another.
Michael Waltrip last week, Steve Park this week.
Boy, and that team, that company, Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, they needed that.
with an Earnhardt hat in his hand. Steve Park will drive to victory lane. His dad, Bob Park, a great modified driver who now works as a gear specialist on that car, will be among those to greet him. Let's go down to Steve Park's pit.
Paul Andrews, the crew chief, tell me what this win means to you and this entire Dale Earnhardt Incorporated team.
That is awesome. I'll tell you, that was a great run for Steve and us here at Rockingham. I mean, we've been really good here at Rockingham before, but I'll tell you, to win it like this, after the tragedy we've had this past week, you cannot ask for anything more perfect. This is awesome. Great job, everybody. It's great.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Having raced door-to-door with the defending series champion, Steve Park rolls to his second and most satisfying victory. As he reaches pit road, Park runs out of fuel. The crew pushes him the rest of the way.
These guys said, man, we worked in the pits all day. All that training we did paid off, but we know we're going to push the car too.
See the Dale Earnhardt banner laying there on the bottom of the windshield. Everybody in the stands giving one of those this weekend.
This is going to make everybody, it's going to make all the Dale's fans, it's going to make everybody feel a little bit better. You know, Mike, it's just going to take away that some of that hurt.
We still grieve, Darrell, but you bet this helps.
There's no therapy like a victory, and to be a part of a victory.
Come on, guys, roll it up that ramp.
Almost there.
Push. They're there. Steve Park has made it to victory lane at the Rock.
Back it up.
Come on out, Steve.
Grab a gear.
Come on out, Steve.
Dick Berggren.
Steve Park on his way out of the race car. We're going to give him a second to get out of here. Incredible run. A wave to the crowd. Jumps on the roof. High fives all around. Oh, he dives. He dives.
It's a mosh pit. It's a mosh pit.
Steve, have you ever tried harder to win a race than today?
Oh, man, it brought tears to my eyes. I don't know what to say. Just want to thank Teresa. You know, Dale's the one who taught me how to drive this place, and he told me to stay off the brakes, and we stayed off the brakes all day long and won the race. So, you know, God bless the whole family. Thank God for this. He's been with us all weekend. You know, we also like to thank Pennzoil. They've just been a great sponsor. We got a great race team here. Nabisco, Nutter Butter, Snap-on Tools, just all the guys. Coca-Cola. I mean,
how about those last couple of laps? How difficult were those laps? You knew Bobby Labonte was all over you.
Yeah. You know, thank God it was Bobby Labonte. I mean, he drove me so clean. We ran so many laps on our tires, and I was running out of fuel at the end, and I thought there was no way we were going to win this race, and we did. I mean,
was this just meant to be?
It was just meant to be. I mean, the good Lord was shining down on us, and I'd like to say hello to my mom and dad. I love you guys. They're home. They couldn't be here because it was a rain-delayed event, but just an emotional win.
Great job, Steve Park. Congratulations. Mike Joy.
Also, don't leave yet, Mike. I got a lot to say. I got to thank Paul Andrews, Dave Charpentier, Steve Meal. Look at these guys right here. These are the best. We got the best engine shop. We like to thank Goodyear. And how about this Chevrolet Monte Carlo? We got one in Victory Lane. My mom's got one at home. She drives around. So we got probably one of the best cars out here, too.
Let's go to Mike. The tears are flowing down here, Mike.
Steve Park is the winner here at the Rock in a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated car.
Ricky Craven celebrates a fifth-place finish in just his second start for PPI. Not only is it the team's first top five, but the first for Craven since October 27, 1997, when he finished third at the same Rockingham track. 2 spots ahead, Jeff Gordon takes home third, but his car fails post-race inspection for being too low. After a grueling debut, Kevin Harvick finishes 14th, the first car 1 lap down. I listened to the guys, I listened to the car, and I think I learned a lot, he says. It was just awesome. I think Dale would have been pretty psyched about that. We made Dale proud. Of crew chief Kevin Hamlin, who made several changes after their 36th place qualifying run, Harvick says, he just told me to save the tires and to drive it hard. He said if I did that, we'd have a good car. In Harvick's 6 remaining starts at Rockingham, he'd only once finished better than on this day. With one more Dale Earnhardt tribute played to Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven, the broadcast and NASCAR's longest week finally draws to a close. Ahead lies another 34 races, an all-star event in Charlotte, and a championship now led by Rusty Wallace, 13 points over Sterling Marlin. There remain questions to be answered, revelations to be uncovered, and action to witness. All this and more awaits in Las Vegas.